Honorable members, we'll take a moment for silent prayer. Please be seated. Order, members. Order. Honorable members, does any member have a notice of a motion? The Honorable Chief Whip, the Honorable Khai, Honorable van Lingen, Honorable Mazwane, Tonishwa, Madam Mutata Mbagwako. In that order, please.
Chairperson of Council, thank you very much for this opportunity. I hereby move without notice that the Council 1 notes with profound sadness and utmost grief the death of Ntate Letsau Nelson Diale, who was one of the few remaining stalwarts of our movement, who passed away on the 8th of January 2015 at the age of 79 years. 2, further notes that Ntate Diale, who was born in Hamasemola in Skukuneland in the Limpopo province on the 1st of January 1936, served the liberation movement and the people of South Africa with profound dedication until his untimely death. 3, further notes that Ntate Diale, whose life was characterized by persistent harassment, violence and imprisonment by the apartheid regime, joined Parliament in 1994 as a member of the then Senate, which later became the National Council of Provinces, and then moved to the National Assembly, where he served with profound distinction until his retirement last year. And lastly, Chairperson, that this Council takes this opportunity to honor this great stalwart of our liberation movement and convey its profound condolences to his family, to the ANC, to the South African Communist Party, and to the community of Hamasemola, as well as the Limpopo province in general, who lost a father, grandfather,
Chief Whip, your time has expired.
Selfless
Did not want
community
to
leader
disturb
and
you,
moral
but-
compass, I so move.
Thank you, ma'am. Honorable members, notices of motions. It is 90 seconds. Please try and confine yourself to the allocated time. I really tried with the Chief Whip because it's a motion of condolences, but I really do not want to be put into the situation. Dadekhay?
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. On behalf of the African National Congress, I hereby give notice that in the next sitting of the Council, I shall move that the Council notes with utmost concern the accident that happened at Kusasaletu, a mine near Cartonville, where 486 workers were trapped underground when a fire started on the mine 75th level, approximately 2,300 meters below surface. Further notes that although the workers were rescued by Sunday afternoon without any injuries, this incident raises concern about the safety in our mines, and take this opportunity to move that in the next sitting of the Council, the House debates safety in our mines. I so move.
Thank you, sir. Honorable van Lingen?
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. On behalf of the Democratic Alliance, I herewith wish to move a notice of a motion that we debate the road infrastructure expenditure in the Eastern Cape and all other provinces as soon as possible. I note to Council, as per the current financial year, the management, upkeep and repair of provincial roads in the Eastern Cape are not always addressed properly, especially in the rural areas where roads are neglected and in a poor condition. Tenders for the provincial road maintenance were only allocated late at the end of November 2014. The SUNROL expenditure per each national road and provincial surface roads must be disclosed and progress report must be submitted. The Eastern Cape Department of Roads and Transport have not provided full information on the expenditure of this department to date on gravel roads maintenance, surface roads maintenance, capital funding appropriate to special integrated projects dedicated to the Eastern Cape, and funds paid to implementing agencies and consultants. Honourable Chairperson, I so move. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. The Honourable Zwane.
Thank you, Chairperson. On behalf of the African National Congress, I hereby move without notice that Council.
Mike, please.
Oh, thank you, Chair. I hereby move without notice that Council 1 notes with utmost concern reports that former football star and Bafana player John Shoes Mshweu is gravely ill and is fighting for his life in a Johannesburg hospital. 2, that Council further notes that John Shoes Mshweu, who played for South African national giants like the Kaizer Chiefs and in the Turkish League for Fenerbahce and Bursaspor from 1997 until his return to South Africa in 2003, has been going from one private hospital to another until his medical aid got exhausted. And thirdly, that Council takes this opportunity to wish Mshweu a speedy recovery and appeals to the soccer fraternity, business community and the South African community at large to rise to the call of Litsima and lend a helping hand to Mshweu and keep him in their prayers. I so move.
Thank you, ma'am. Honourable Member. You, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. Honourable Chairperson, on behalf of the Democratic Alliance, I hereby wish to move a notice of a motion that at the next sitting, Council takes note that for the last 4 consecutive years now, the Tabacheo municipality in Mpumalanga has received a disclaimer report from the Auditor General. A total of 100% of the reported objectives, indicators and targets were not consistent with those in the approved Integrated Development Plan. This is due to the management of this municipality not adhering to the FMPPI due to a lack of proper processes and systems. The municipality's fruitless and wasteful expenditure of 19 million rand has again been identified during this last audit process, resulting in further irregular expenditure now amounting to a total of 150,572 rand. This municipality now owes ESCOM a staggering 256 million rand in arrears. It is quite clear that this municipality is in major distress and should be placed under Section 139B. I so move. Thank you.
Honourable Sak, thank you very much. The Honourable Juan.
Thank you, Honourable Chairperson. On behalf of the Democratic Alliance, I hereby table a notice of a motion that at its next sitting, this House will debate the alarming increasing levels of drug and substance abuse in South Africa, especially among youth and children. The impact it has on the young people, their families and communities are devastatingly unacceptable. The government must commit to a multidisciplinary, decisive program to deal with the drug and substance abuse to save our societies from collapse. This situation must receive urgent and prioritized attention to ensure that our social and economic fiber is not completely eroded. I so move, Chairperson.
Thank you, ma'am. The Honourable Kumbi. Honourable Kaula, you will be the last.
Thank you, Chairperson. On behalf of the ANC, notice of motion, I hereby give notice that in the next sitting of the council, I shall move that the council notes with utter contempt the number of cases involving the rape of young girls and children in South Africa. 2, further notes that a report compiled by Solidarity Helping Hand said that while there were about 60 cases of children rape reported in South Africa every day, more than 88% of child rape were never reported. Thirdly, takes this opportunity to move that in the next sitting of the council, the House debates the incident of rape and sexual violence against young girls and young children in our society, and further appeals to authority to wage a concerted fight against sexual violence and rape in our communities. I so move. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, sir. The Honorable Kaula. Honorable Groenewald, you are next.
Honorable Chairperson, thank you. On behalf of Inkatha Freedom Party, I shall move at the next sitting of this House that this House debate the blatant lack of accountability of the former owners of the Aurora mine and the continual struggle by former miners, some of whom live in abject poverty, to get their salaries paid. I thank you.
Thank you, sir. The Honorable Groenewald.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. On behalf of the Democratic Alliance, I hereby wish to move a notice of a motion that in the next sitting this House will debate the state provides public as well as social housing to the lower income groups in South Africa. Since 1994, many of these state properties were not taken up into the state inventory. That caused the crisis regarding legal ownership of property or land. The DA demands for strict restrictions on completion of the state inventory, combined with a democratically planned explanation of public housing. Only then we can begin to address the root of the crisis. I so move.
Thank you, sir. Honorable members, I have no further hands coming up for notices of motion. I would like to ask the House if there is any member who has a motion without notice. Almost the whole House. Can somebody take down the names for me? I will again start here. Date Suka, Date Bota, Memutala, Mary Khale, Date Smith, Date Isaac, Medlamini, Date Lont, I have, oh, I'm sorry. My apologies, he was busy pulling my leg somewhere, so I was trying to be, my apologies. Sefako, in that way, please. Date Suka.
Enkosi mhlanga phambili walendlu yowisomthetho. I hereby move without notice that the Council notes and welcomes and applauds the move by the Minister of Arts and Culture, Honorable Member Nathi Mthethwa, in arranging and facilitating for the repatriation of the remains of our struggle heroes in the name of Comrade J.B. Max and Moses Kotana from Russia to their land of birth, that is South Africa. Further notes that these leaders of our struggle for freedom and democracy are forming part of our nation's history. Hence, our President saw fit for our government to take that decision. Further notes that the political activist and trade unionist, Comrade J.B. Max, served as president of the Transvaal branch of the ANC, became the chairperson of the South African Communist Party in 1962, and was sent to the ANC external mission in Tanzania in 1963 and went to the then Soviet Union, where he died of heart attack in Moscow in 1972. Further notes that Comrade Moses Kotana was the Secretary General of the South African Communist Party from 1939 until his death in 1978. He was selected to study at the Lenin School in Moscow and became one of the first activists to become banned under the Suppression of Communism Act. He suffered a stroke in 1968 and went for treatment in the then Soviet Union, where he died in 1978. Chairperson, therefore, commends the efforts informed by the reconciliation and the need to work together to tell the story of where we come from and celebrate our heroes. I so moved. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, sir. Is there anybody against the motion? None? It is agreed to. The Honorable Boter?
Honourable Chairperson, thank you. Motion without notice. I hereby move on behalf of the Democratic Alliance that at its next sitting, this House urgently debates Section 26 of the Municipal Demarcations Act as it implies to the municipal boundary changes. The debate must consider A, assistance provided by the MECs for local government and traditional affairs in the provinces. B, the cooperation of municipalities in this regard. C, the role of the Auditor General in alerting the municipalities. D, the role of SALGA to support local councillors. E, the National Treasury's role. F, effectiveness of legislation. And G, the financial dysfunctionality, maladministration, and service delivery of municipalities considered for demarcation. Point 2, we also call on the Minister of COCTA to submit the reports on each of the affected, namely dysfunctional municipalities that are currently under review for demarcation. I so move. Thank you.
Thank you, Meneer. Mayor Mutara? Oh, apologies. Apologies. Honorable members, is there any... Honorable Lund, is there anybody against the motion as put forward by the Honorable Boter? Is there anybody against? There is an objection. The motion is then converted into a motion without notice. The Honorable Mutara.
Thank you, Chairperson. I hereby move without notice that the Council notes that last Tuesday, the 16th of February, marked 24 years since the brutal and senseless killing of ANC human rights lawyer Bheki Mlangeni, who was maimed by apartheid forces in 1991 at the age of 35 through a parcel bomb that was packaged as a tape player. Further notes that Bheki Mlangeni worked with former police captain Dirk Coetzee to expose the existence of a secret police unit based at Vlakplaas, which carried out assassinations of anti-apartheid activists. Further congratulates the Gauteng Premier, Honorable David Makura, as he mentioned in his State of the Province address yesterday, that 3 of the hospitals in Gauteng will be renamed to honor some of the outstanding martyrs who have sacrificed their lives for our freedom. Zola Jabulani Hospital will be named after the late Bheki Mlangeni, the Natalspruit Hospital will be named after the late Tele Mokhorani, and Far East Rand Hospital will be named after the late Mayor Ruth First, and takes this opportunity to remember and pay homage to this great warrior of our liberation movement. I so move.
Thank you. Is there anybody against this motion? No, it is Mayor Khalif.
Thank you, Chairperson. On behalf of the ANC, I hereby move without notice that the Council knows with appreciation the stability that is beginning to prevail in Malamulele after the unrest that has taken place for weeks. Further knows that the strike that stemmed out from their demand by the residents of the area for their municipality has been suspended after engagements with the stakeholders through the interventions by some government departments such as COCTA, led by Minister Pravin Gordhan. Further knows that the riot has brought not only the torching and closure of schools and other public facilities, but it further caused closure of shops, transport, industry, and other important services to the people, and therefore takes this opportunity to welcome and commend these interventions by the Minister of COGTA, whereby 500 million rands in the current budget is set aside to finance a package of service intended for Vembe district and Malamulele area in particular. I so move.
Is there anybody who has an issue? Ntate Smith, are you on this motion? On this motion, you are objecting. The motion has been objected to. Ntate Smith, you are next. Ntate Smith, you are protected.
I feel like deja vu now. Honourable Chairperson, on behalf of the Democratic Alliance, I hereby wish to move a motion without notice that this House notes that Minister Pravin Gordhan signed a memorandum of understanding with all the relevant parties involved in Malamulele unrest. That this agreement included a 6-month peace agreement. Therefore, this House requires Minister Pravin Gordhan to table this memorandum of understanding to this House within 14 days. I so move.
Thank you, sir. Anybody? Order, members. Objection. Both motions, which were very different, honourable members, are objected to. The Honourable Esak.
Thank you again, Honourable Chairperson, for the opportunity. Honourable Chairperson, on behalf of the Democratic Alliance, I hereby wish to move a motion without notice that this Council takes note. At least 350 families in Mpumalanga do not have a roof over their heads and a place to call home. This is due to the Provincial Department of Human Settlements underspending their budget by over 30 million. There continues to be massive underspending in this department, which has hindered housing to many people in Mpumalanga. According to the appropriation bill, the department's budget is expected to increase from 1.380 billion to 1.766 billion in the next financial year. It is extremely concerning, Chairperson, that this department is currently failing to spend the budget it has been allocated. It is quite clear that not only the strongest political leadership will guide this department to provide for the current needs of the underprivileged families in Mpumalanga. The DA will keep placing pressure on MEC Violet Siwela to ensure that the department is spending all the funds allocated to them. The residents of Mpumalanga needs this department to succeed. I so move. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Ntate Issa. Is there anybody against this motion? Is there anybody against? None? Motion? I didn't hear any objection. Yes, it is carried. The Honorable Lamini.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. On behalf of the glorious movement, the African National Congress, I hereby move without notice that Council notes and welcome in applause the move demonstrated by the South African Medical Research Council in the fight against cancer in South Africa. Further notes that the MRC is giving 3 universities 37 million for the research towards fighting cancer, enabling the University of Cape Town, focusing on the gynecological cancer, including those of cervix, uterus, and ovaries, while the University of Witwatersrand to concentrate on the cancer of the breast, colony, and pancreas, and the University of KwaZulu-Natal on the cancer of the esophagus, gallbladder, and liver, and takes this opportunity to welcome this funding as one of the strategic interventions that South Africa is making to ensure accurate cancer surveillance, better and quicker diagnoses, and access to treatment. I so move.
Thank you, ma'am. Is there any member against this motion? None. Carried. The Honorable Faber.
Thank you, Honourable Chair. This motion without notice. On behalf of the Democratic Alliance, I hereby move that the Gauteng Premier David Makura promised major financial relief to motorists in his State of the Province address on Monday. The provincial government is part of the current consultation process to develop a better dispensation which will migrate the negative impact on the e-tolls on the people of Gauteng, especially the middle and the lower income groups. The provincial government was part of consultation process led by Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa, and the panel found that in its current form, the e-toll system was, number one, unaffordable, inequitable, and placed a disproportionate burden on low and middle income households. The e-toll system needs to be reviewed to address mainly affordability by low and middle income motorists and advance administrative simplicity. It is clear that the ANC itself can't find the answer to this monster that they created between themselves. The DA hope that this consultation process will be open for public participation and that all South Africans can give input and a viable solution can be found. I so move.
Thank you, sir. Is there any member against this motion? There is an objection. The Honorable Sipako.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. On behalf of African National Congress, I hereby move without notice that the Council note that the 20th of February marked 10 years since the death of Comrade Raymond Mhlaba, who was an anti-apartheid activist, a fearless leader of the African National Congress and the South African Communist Party. Further note that Umre, as he was affectionately known, spent 25 years of the prime of his life in prison after he was sentenced along with Comrade Nelson Mandela in the Rivonia trial. Further note that Umre, who was born in Masoka village in the Fort Beaufort district, was also one of the ANC leaders arrested during the transport boycott of 1952, when he led a group of volunteers into the European only entrance of the New Brighton police stations in Port Elizabeth, and served in various structures of the ANC as ACP and Umkondo Siso.
Remember?
Until his
your time has
untimely
expired.
death. I so move.
Honorable members, is there any voice against this motion? It has been agreed to please submit the whole motion. The Honorable Mutashuping.
No, thanks, Honorable Chairperson. I hereby move without notice that the Council notes with sadness the passing of Mr. Yako Moorcroft, a teacher at Dr. Havenga Primary School in Rodipoort. Further notes that Mr. Moorcroft passed on at the age of 48 years. He was one of those teachers that the nation desperately needs. That is mathematics and technology teacher. Further notes that Mr. Moorcroft collapsed on Monday the 16th of February from a heart attack in front of learners while he was teaching. Further notes that Mr. Moorcroft, that the nation has lost a parent that did not only prepare the kids of the nation for the future, but whose life came to an end whilst on national duty. And take this opportunity to convey its profound condolences to his family and friends. I so move.
Thank you, Honorable Member. I am sure on this one you are unanimous. Is there anybody against this motion? None. Mayor Manopole.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. On behalf of African National Congress, I hereby move without notice that the Council notes with profound sadness the death of the African National Congress veteran Ntate Frank Sekgwale, who has passed at the age of 97 years. Further notes that Ntate Frank Sekgwale, who was also a father to a former African National Congress NEC member, Comrade Tokyo Sekgwale, is counted among the senior veterans of our people's struggle as led by the ANC and one of the few living South Africans who fought in the Second World War. Acknowledge that the departure of the Comrade Frank Sekgwale represents an immensely sad moment, as he remains one of the many compatriots who were prepared to pay the highest price for the liberation of South Africa, and takes this opportunity to express his profound condolences to Sekgwale family, especially his wife Mme Sekgwale and his son Tokyo Sekgwale, who we found that they will find solace in the fact that he dedicated his life to the liberation of our people. I so move.
Thank you, honorable members. Is there any member against this motion? None. It is carried. The Honorable Mokwele.
Thank you, Chair. I hereby move without I've for quite some time. The economic freedom fighters rise to move without notice that the House, A, note EFF member of the National Assembly, Honorable Renelo Mashabela, was hospitalized following a broken jaw and a broken cheekbone. B, note that the Honorable Renelo and the rest of EFF MPs were indiscriminately assaulted by security force on the 12th February on the instruction of the Speaker and the Chair of this House. C, acknowledge that Honorable Renelo did not speak on the fateful day and was not asked to leave the House, but was assaulted and illegally forcefully taken out of the House. D, note that there was no threat to anyone's life when the Speaker ordered the police to enter the House. E, remembers that in 1998, Honorable Johnny DeLange, an ANC MP, physically assaulted Honorable Manis Kuman, then National Party MP, and the House degenerated into violence. Police were never called into the House. F, condemned the illegal instruction to the police by the Speaker of Parliament. G, condemned the assault on the democratically elected members of Parliament, especially women. I so move.
Thank you, ma'am. Does any member have any objection? It is objected to. Honorable members, order. Order. Members, that was the last hand on motions without notice. The House enjoins all the members on all the motions of condolences to the respective families, and we wish all the families who have lost solace. We therefore want to continue, members, and ask the Secretary to read our first order. The Secretary will read the first, the second, the third, and the fourth orders.
Consideration of report of Select Committee on Land and Mineral Resources, agreement on port state measures to prevent, deter, and eliminate illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing with explanatory memorandum, convention for the conservation of southern bluefin tuna, CCSBT, with explanatory memorandum, agreement for the establishment of the Indian Ocean Tuna Commission, IOTC, with explanatory memorandum, acceptance of the DOHA amendment to the Kyoto Protocol to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change.
Thank you, sir. I call upon the Honorable Khai.
Honorable Chairperson, Honorable Chief Whip, Honorable Deputy Minister of COGTA, honorable members, and honorable special delegates from our provinces, the leadership of SALGA, our guest in the gallery. Good afternoon. Let me first welcome our chairperson, who was supposed to be presenting the report. He has been booked off sick for quite a long time. He is now back with us. So on his behalf, I'm tabling the report of the Select Committee because these decisions were taken in his absence. The IOTC and CCSBT are intergovernmental regional fisheries management organization, the RFMOs, mandated to manage tuna and tuna-like species, while IOTC manages a vast range of tuna and tuna-like species in the Indian Ocean. CCSBT is solely responsible for the management of southern bluefin tuna, SBT. RFMO's objectives are to promote cooperation among its members with a view to ensuring the conservation of the optimum utilization of stocks and encourage the sustainable development of fisheries. These RFMOs conduct stock assessments, determine and adopt conservation and management measures, determine a total allowance catch, and issue country quotas for these high seas fisheries resources. South Africa is a cooperating, non-contracting party to IOTC and CCSBT and has not yet acceded to the Food and Agriculture Organization's board state measures. As a cooperating and contracting party, South Africa is obligated to adhere to all management and conservation measures of the IOTC and CCSBT, including data reporting as required by all members parties. Furthermore, South Africa has to apply for this status to be renewed each year. The renewal of South Africa's status is determined by the members parties by scrutinizing South Africa's performance with regard to the implementation of IOTC's management and conservation measures. These factors create large uncertainty in securing long-term access to our vessels to fish for tuna and tuna-like species. The tuna longline fishery has the potential to become the third most economically important fishery in South Africa after the hake and small pelagic fisheries. Full membership of the tuna RFMOs can make the difference between 150 million rand industry and a 1.2 billion industry in foreign currency. It has also the greatest potential to provide new jobs in the fishing sector in the short term. The agreement on port state measures to prevent, deter, eliminate illegal, unreported and unregulated fishing aims to prevent illegally caught fish from entering international markets through ports. Once this FAO broker treaty enters into force, it will deny access to fishing ports to ships involved in illegal fishing. South Africa's accession to the IOTC and CCSBT Regional Fisheries Management Organization is long outstanding. There's urgency for South Africa to accede to these agreements and develop her national fisheries. By acceding to these IOTC and CCSBT agreements, the government will create a more secure environment for the development of tuna longline fishery, thereby increasing South Africa's revenue. In the case of CCSBT in particular, South Africa will be granted an increase of her southern bluefin tuna allocation upon accession. This would also promote the creation of new jobs and would contribute to uplifting the quality of existing employment in this sector. Full membership of the IOTC and CCSBT will allow South Africa to table its concern and to influence the decision taken at these RFMOS pertaining to the management of the lucrative, valuable tuna and tuna-like resources. There is a linkage between RFMOs and the global fight against illegal, unreported, unregulated fisheries. Illegal, unreported, unregulated fisheries is a global threat to sustainable fisheries and to the management and conservation of fisheries resources and marine biodiversity. Let me quickly go, because I see I'm running out of time, that the committee, therefore, Honorable Chairperson, is recommending that the NCOP approve South Africa's accession to the agreement for the establishment of the Indian Ocean Tuna Commission, that it approves accession to the Convention of the Conservation of Southern Bluefin Tuna, and the Food and Agriculture Organization Sport State Measures Agreement to prevent, deter, and eliminate illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing. Coming to the Kyoto Protocol, the Kyoto Protocol to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change is an international treaty that creates binding obligation on industrialized countries to reduce greenhouse gases emission. South Africa is a party to the convention and the protocol. Under the Kyoto Protocol, developed country parties have agreed to legally binding reduction to their greenhouse gases emissions during commitment period. The first commitment period came to an end in 2012, and the second commitment period applies to emission reduction for the period 2013-2020. The protocol was amended in 2012 to provide for the second commitment period by the adoption of the DOHA amendments to the Kyoto Protocol. The meeting of parties to the Kyoto Protocol adopted the DOHA amendment to the Kyoto Protocol by decisions of the Conference for Member Parties at its 8th session in Doha, in Qatar, in December 2012, in order for DOHA amendments to enter into force. Instrument of acceptance need to be submitted by parties. And therefore, in terms of the recommendation, the committee recommends that the NCOP supports the DOHA amendments. I thank you.
Thank you, sir. Honorable members, this concludes the report and the debate on orders 1, 2, 3, and 4. I therefore, now in accordance to Rule 71, I want to put the question on the first order to the House, and the question is on the agreements on port state measures to prevent, deter, and eliminate illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing with explanatory memorandum. I put the question to the House. Does the House agree? Does the House wish to make any declarations? None? We are agreed. The House agrees. We then move on to the next order. Secretary? Honorable Khai, I'm advised that you are very popular in the House today. I therefore must ask you to come and deal with the next order, and that is oversight to entities. No, I need to put all the orders before I do that. The second order is the Convention for Conservation of Southern Bluefin Tuna with the explanatory memorandum. Does the House agree? I will proceed to put the third order of today. It is the agreement for the establishment of the Indian Ocean Tuna Commission with the explanatory memorandum. Does the House agree? You agree. And the fourth order was the acceptance of the DOHA amendment to the Kyoto Protocol to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. Does the House agree? We agree. Secretary, the next order.
Consideration of report of Select Committee on Land and Mineral Resources, oversight visit to entities of the Department of Mineral Resources and Agriculture, Forestry and Fisheries.
Thank you very much, the Honorable Khai. And please don't repeat the signs of age as they are having me today.
Don't see time. We have already greeted everybody earlier. So we are now tabling the report of the Select Committee. The Select Committee on Land and Mineral Resources, having conducted oversight on the Council of Geosciences, the Agriculture Research Council, and on the State Board Biological Products from the 21st to the 22nd October 2014, reports as follows. During the National Council of Provinces strategic planning session held in 2014, it was decided that the committee would ensure that it visited state-owned entities that fell under the department overseen by the committee. The committee therefore used the period for the activities associated with the Select Committee on Land and Mineral Resources for this oversight purpose. The entities visited included the Council of Geoscience, Agriculture Research Council, and on the State Board Biological Products, which were all located in Pretoria and around. The aim of and objective of the oversight visit was to allow members to engage with the entities identified, as well as to familiarize themselves with the role that these entities play with regard to matters identified by the committee members for future oversight as set out in the strategic plan. This trip was also meant to be part of the induction program for the committee, as all committee members were new to the portfolio. The entities visited presented various challenges and constraints with regards to funding models and statutory mandates that they need to fulfill within the allocated budget. An alarming trend that emerged was that the budgets were being reduced, but the mandates of the entities remained the same or were increased. The main constraints were inadequate statutory funding, staff retention in these scarce skills, as well as aging infrastructure and equipment for these specialized services. The committee therefore tabled the following recommendation for the House to consider: that the Department of Mineral Resources provide the funding model used to determine the transfer made to the Council for Geoscience to implement their mandate. The Council for Geoscience needs to provide the committee with a report on the budget allocated for research and legislative or statutory requirements and the implication if the budget allocations are inadequate. The Council for Geoscience must indicate what research support is currently being provided to input into the debates around the acid mine drainage and the exploration of shale gas for energy security. Recommendation on the Agriculture Research Council. The Department of Agriculture, Forestry and Fisheries must provide details of funding model used to provide a transfer to the Agriculture Research Council. A feasibility study on the use of agricultural research as a service provider for the Department of Rural Development and Land Reform project must be conducted. The Department of Agriculture, Forestry and Fisheries must conduct an assessment on the funding provided for the Agriculture Research Council to implement its mandate. The impact on the Agriculture Research Council is having on the smallholder sector must be assessed, and the Department of Agriculture, Forestry and Fisheries must facilitate collaboration with the Department of Rural Development and Land Reform. The Department of Agriculture, Forestry and Fisheries must report on why the foot and mouth vaccine production is given to ARC, the Agriculture Research Council, which does not have a vaccine production facilities, whilst on the Stepworth Biological Products is a vaccine production facility. In terms of recommendation on their Stepworth Biological Products, the committee agreed that the Department of Agriculture, DAF, should provide details of the funding model used to provide transfer to the on-the-Stepworth biological products. That a feasibility study on the use of on-the-Stepworth biological product as a service provider to the Department of DAF and all the provincial departments of agriculture should be conducted to assess potential of OBP in securing market share of the state-procured vaccines. DAF needs to report to the committee on the development, including budget, of the new premises for the on-the-Stepworth biological products to achieve the good manufacturing practice status. Thank you, Honorable Chair.
Thank you, sir. Honorable members, this concludes the report and the debate. I therefore wish to put the question to the House, and the question is that the report be agreed to. Does the House agree to the report? We're agreed. Thank you very much. Honorable members, I would then want to move on to ask the Secretary to read the 6th and the 7th orders of
Consideration of report of Select Committee on Security and Justice, draft notice and schedule submitted in terms of Section 23B of the Judges' Remuneration and Conditions of Employment Act of 2001, determining the rate at which salaries are payable to Constitutional Court judges and judges annually, draft notice and schedule in terms of Section 12(3) of the Magistrate Act of 1993, determining the rate at which salaries are payable to magistrates annually.
The Honorable Klimbi.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, in terms of Section 21A of the Judges' Remuneration and Condition of Employment Act of 2001, Constitutional Court judges and judges are entitled to an annual salaries and such allowance or benefits as determined by the President from time to time by notice in the Gazette and approved by Parliament in terms of Section 2(4) of the Act. On 18th February 2015, the Select Committee on Security and Justice received a briefing from the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development in relation to the proposed increases in the salaries of respectively the magistrate and judges as set out in a draft notice by the President that had to be approved by both houses of Parliament. Chairperson, for this year, the final recommendation was A, 6% increase in respect of judicial officers earning less than 1 million. B, 5% in respect of judicial officers earning more than 1 million. The Select Committee on Security and Justice, having considered the draft notice and schedule submitted in terms of Section 2(4) of the Judges' Remuneration and Conditions of Employment Act 2001, Act number 47 of 2001, determining by the rate at which salaries are payable to constitutional court judges and judges annually with effect from 1st April 2014, referred to it, recommends that the Council approve the draft notice and schedule. Thank you, Chairperson.
Honorable members.
Can you allow me to proceed?
What you said, thank you.
Yes, yes. Chairperson, again, determination of remuneration of magistrate in terms of Section 12(1)(a) of the Magistrates Act of 1993, Act number 90 of 1993. Section 12(1)(a) of the Magistrates Act 90 of 1993 spells out the procedures for determining the salaries of magistrates. Magistrates are entitled to such salaries, allowances, or benefits as determined by the President from the time to time by notice in Gazette, after taking into consideration the recommendation of the Independent Commission for Remuneration of Public Office Bearers, established under Section 2 of the Independent Commission for Remuneration of Public Office Bearers Act of 1997, Act number 92 of 1997, and approved by President in terms of subsection 3. The Section 12(3)(a) provides for such a notice as contemplated in Section 12(1)(a). A notice issued under subsection 1(a) must be submitted to Parliament for approval before publication thereof. On the 18th February 2015, the Select Committee on Security and Justice received a briefing from the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development in relation to the proposed increases in the salaries of respectively the magistrates and judges, as set out in the draft notice by the President that had to be approved by the both houses of Parliament. For this financial year, the final recommendation was that both magistrates and judges should be effectively received A, 60% increase in respect of judicial officers earning less than 1 million, B, 5% in respect of judicial officers earning more than 1 million. The Department of Justice and Constitutional Development further informed the Select Committee that a review of comprehensive benefits for the magistrate would be undertaken. The Select Committee on Security and Justice, having considered the draft notice and scheduled in terms of Section 12(3) of the Magistrates Act 1993, Act number 90 of 1993, determining the rate at which salaries are payable to magistrate annually with effect from 1st April 2014, referred to it, recommends that the Council approve the draft notice and schedule. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much. This concludes, honorable members, the report and the debate. I shall now put the question in respect of the 6th order, and the question is that the order which reads as draft notice and schedule submitted in terms of Section 2(3)(b) of the Judges' Remuneration and Conditions of Employment Act of 2001, determining the rate at which salaries are payable to constitutional court judges and judges annually, be agreed to. Are we agreed? Agreed to. I shall proceed to put on the question for the 7th order, which is that the House is asked to consider the report from the Select Committee on the draft notice and schedule in terms of Section 12(3) of the Magistrates Act of 1993, determining the rate at which salaries are payable to magistrates annually. Does the House agree? We are agreeing. Thank you very much, honorable members. We can then proceed to the next question.
Debate on traditional leadership in South Africa, working together to ensure synergy and cooperation between local government and traditional leadership for the advancement of our people.
Thank you very much. The Honorable Kaula, I have the honor to call you to the podium.
Honorable Chairperson of the NCOP, the Honorable Deputy Minister of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs, on behalf of Inkatha Freedom Party, I wish to start by expressing our sincere gratitude and my leader's sincere gratitude to the Honorable Chairperson of the NCOP, Honorable Thandi Modise, for agreeing that this very important topic be put in the NCOP agenda after our caucus request to her office. Traditional leaders were there during the pre-colonial era, the colonial era, and the post-colonial era. They have always been there to defend their land, their livestock, and their communities. The traditional leaders of our country were actually the first freedom fighters. I can refer to the likes of King Hintsa, Queen Mandantise, King Sekhukhune, King Shaka, King Cetshwayo, and many others. Therefore, the institution of Ubukhosi is inherent in us. It is important to our communities and is of historical value and significance to South Africa. The issue of traditional leaders in decision-making structures and of governance in the country cannot merely be reduced to the debate about salaries and benefits. It is much more than that. Chapter 12 of the Constitution of South Africa, 1996, stipulates that and specifically says, acknowledges the institution of traditional leaders, its role and its place in the system of democratic governance. This chapter provides for the continued authority and functioning of traditional leaders in accordance with traditional law within the broader legal framework, and for traditional leaders to participate at local government level. Several laws have been passed from 1994 which acknowledges the importance of traditional leaders. We can mention the Local Government Municipal Structures Act, the Communal Land Rights Act, CLARA, which had been enacted to deal inter alia with land rights on traditional leaders and was declared unconstitutional on procedural grounds in May 2010. A replacement has never been considered since then. The National Framework of Traditional Leaders Act, the Traditional Leaders Courts Bill, which was withdrawn along the way. The role of traditional leaders is mentioned in Section 81 of our Constitution, and it says, I quote, traditional authorities that traditionally observe a system of customary law in the area of a municipality may participate through their leaders identified in terms of subsection 2 in the proceedings of the council of that municipality, and those traditional leaders must be allowed to attend and participate in any meeting of the council. The MEC for local government in a province, in accordance with Schedule 6, and by notice in the Provincial Gazette, must identify the traditional leaders who, in terms of subsection 1, may participate in the proceedings of a municipal council. The number of traditional leaders that may participate in the proceedings of a municipal council may not exceed 20% of the total number of councillors in that council. But if the council has fewer than 10 councillors, only one traditional leader may participate. If a number of traditional leaders identified in municipalities' area of jurisdiction exceed 20% of that total number of councillors, the MEC for local government in the province may determine a system for the rotation of those traditional leaders. Before a municipal council takes a decision of any matter directly affecting the area of traditional authority, the council must give the leader of that authority the opportunity to express a view on the matter. The MEC for local government in a province, after consulting the Provincial House of Traditional Leaders, may, by notice in the Provincial Gazette, regulate the participation of traditional leaders in the proceedings of the municipal council and prescribe a role for traditional leaders in the affairs of a municipality. The gravity of the situation here, Honorable Chairperson, is the extent to which traditional leaders are given a voice on governance decisions through their managed participation. It is clear that it is the MEC for local government who is responsible for identifying which leaders should participate in a local government and who may then attend and participate in the meetings of the municipal councils. Even that limited number allowed to attend do not carry the authority of councillors nor the right to vote. Section 81, subsection 3 states that the leaders of the traditional authority which is to be directly affected by a municipal decision is to be given an opportunity to make representations on the matter. But the municipal council is not obliged to act on this view or to take it into account in the decision-making process. The participation of that regulated limited number of traditional leaders cannot be expected to have any binding influence when decisions are taken. These stipulations result in traditional leaders merely becoming ceremonial figures in matters of local governance. Whilst traditional leaders are subject to the requirements of the Public Finance Management Act, Whilst traditional leaders are subject to the requirements of the Public Finance Management Act, there is, however, no dedicated budget allocated to the traditional councils, nor the National House of Traditional Leaders, nor the provincial houses of traditional leaders, nor the houses of traditional leaders at local level. This issue of the houses of traditional leaders having no dedicated budgets severely inhibit the effectiveness of traditional leadership. The matters pertaining to resources and regulated participation have thus placed traditional leaders at the traditional leadership just outside of the sphere of governance. Traditional leadership has in essence become an institution with no official function and none or very limited administrative capacity to perform accordingly. For an improved partnership in governance between traditional leaders and all other structures of governance, a re-look into these issues is necessary, Honorable Deputy Minister. There is also an important issue of overlapping responsibilities and lack of clear delineation of roles. For example, there have been instances in the country where Amakosi and Izinduna have been responsible for the allocation of sites, and in the same jurisdiction, councillors have also been responsible for the same. In this vein, functions and powers of traditional leaders need to be spelled out just as those of the municipalities, which are also spelled out. The real partnership between local government and the institution of traditional leadership need to be strengthened and empowered through amendments in legislation in order to recognize the role of traditional leadership in governance. And I would like to say, because today, Honorable Deputy Minister, I have this ample time, which is not usually given to me. This is not a new matter in South Africa. There have been engagements between traditional leaders of the country, not of a particular section. In fact, you'll recall that they even formed themselves into a coalition of traditional leaders coming from all corners, and they engaged the then Deputy President of South Africa, who is today the President of the country, on this matter. And there were agreements which were reached, but those agreements have never been put into practice. And what we are calling for here as the IFP, Honorable Deputy Minister, is that this matter be looked into so that there is synergy, so that there is smooth running of governance at local level, so that both councillors on the one hand and the traditional leaders on the other hand can find that they are part and parcel of the governance issues on the ground. Because right now, you talk of powers and functions which are regulated, which are by law there. When you come to the traditional leaders, you don't have such which is by law there in the country, except that the Constitution allows them to do certain things. So what we are saying is, can these issues be looked into? And it's not a new slate. You just refer to the engagements which have been there, agreements which were reached, and we are saying, can those be taken into consideration and you take them forward? Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson.
Thank you, sir. I have the pleasure to call the Honorable Order. The Chairperson of the Portfolio Committee on Local Government and Traditional Affairs, Eastern Cape, the Honorable Nusila.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson. Honorable Chairperson of the NCOP, Deputy Minister of COGTA, Chief Whip of the NCOP, the Deputy Chair of the NCOP, permanent members of the NCOP, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Traditional leaders in our country has lived for centuries, and they will continue to put their energies towards advancement of development of their own people. We must proceed from the position that our government respects this institution and recognizes that it has a role to play in the advancement of the interest of our people within the context of a democratic setting. Traditional affairs in our province continue to provide the required support to the institutional of traditional leadership to fulfill the constitutional requirement of recognizing the role and functions of the institution. Despite financial constraint, the department continues to provide the institution with the required support as guided by the national and provincial policies and legislation. However, it is noted that as our people begin to understand the role being played by our government in recognizing and restoring the dignity of this institution, number of claims and disputes continue to increase, which poses a challenge not only to government, but to the institution of the traditional leadership at large. Support to our traditional leadership. In terms of the administrative support, 34 research reports on genealogies of royal families, subsistence and traveling, accommodations for kings, gratuities for traditional leaders who have resigned, and to beneficiaries of those who are deceased. In terms of capacity building, the department have managed to train 1,373 traditional leaders. Payment of sitting allowances on traditional councils, which are sitting 4 sittings per year. The impact of that support, Honorable Chair. The construction and renovation of traditional council that benefited the respective communities since these projects were labor intensive. Gazetting of genealogies that were agreed upon and signed by all royal family members. Stability within royal families and the communities concerned upon resolution of traditional leadership, claims and dispute. In facilitating rural development, traditional leaders work closely with government department in ensuring that our communities access government services, your South African security agents, home affairs, rural development and agrarian reforms. Partnership between Imbumba Yamakoskaza Komkulu with government department. Research in some of the matters is also taken care by the province. Challenges that are actually confronting the province, delays, Honorable Chair, in the finalization of the traditional cost bill, delays in the finalization of traditional leadership and governance, particularly with the provisions of local houses, the absence of determination for salaries of principal traditional leaders, sitting allowances for local houses, traditional leadership unfunded mandate, especially in relation to the national framework on tools of grade of traditional leadership. Those are the key challenges that I think our province is faced with. Moving forward, Honorable Chair, for the coming 5 years, send 77 disputes and claims recommendation to the Premier for decision-making purposes, construct 10 traditional leadership institutions, renovate 10 traditional leadership institutions, and more policies for institution of traditional leadership developed for good governance, continuing with the establishment of local housing. And more emphasis, Honorable Chair, will be put on community and rural development. Establish a centralized initiation school to curb the alarming state of death of initiate in Pondo and within the province. Those are the other matters that the Premier will be taking care of. In conclusion, Honorable Chairperson, Eastern Cape is committed in realizing the provision of Chapter 12 of the Constitution as it is leading in some aspect of traditional leadership. Siyabonga. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Honorable. The Honorable Mpambo Sibukwan.
Thank you, Chairperson of the National Council of Provinces, honorable members of this House, distinguished guests. Honorable Chairperson, in the Western Cape where the DA governs, we are moving forward in integrating our rural and urban communities in line with our principles of an open opportunity society for all. The DA fully understands the Constitution, and in this regard, we should create an obligation on the state and the judiciary to safeguard our traditional groups and allow for them to carve out their space in the society. The Western Cape Provincial Constitution Chairperson states clearly that provincial legislation must make provision for the establishment and reasonable funding within the province's reasonable resources of a cultural council or councils for a community or communities in the Western Cape, sharing a common cultural and language heritage. This said, Chairperson, in the Western Cape, we have registered 24 cultural councils. 16 of those are councils belonging to the Khoi and the San community over respectively, and are in isiXhosa, the Basotho, Bakai, and the Zulu councils. This is a good story to tell, and the best story to tell. How traditional communities benefit is an inclusive involvement in 3 of our public entities, namely the Western Cape Cultural Community, the Western Cape Language Committee, and the Western Cape Heritage Community. These structures allow for dialogue between government and our traditional bodies so that we can strive towards our constitutional mandate to protect each and every culture in South Africa. That said, Honorable Chairperson, our biggest challenge is not in recognizing traditional leadership. It is to integrate traditional leadership into an open society, as the DA proclaims. Respecting all cultures where all South Africans are equal before the law. Where there are discriminatory laws, like the former Traditional Courts Bill that was tabled before the NCOP in 2012, Honorable Chairperson, the DA's message is loud and clear. We will continue to fight for human dignity, equality, and freedom, Chairperson. This is evident by the Western Cape Respects campaign, which has just recently been tabled. We saw cooperation between our traditional communities and the Western Cape provincial government. This epitomizes how traditional communities and government can support one common goal that protects our most vulnerable people. This is the best story to tell, not just good, best.
Your time has expired.
It is interventions like these that continue that the DA's commitment for growing our economy, creating jobs, and allowing every South African to form part of an opportunity society for all and not just for some. Your time has
expired, ma'am. The Honorable One.
Thank you, Chairperson. Honorable Chairperson of the NCOP, Deputy Minister of COPTA, Deputy Chairperson of the NCOP, Chief Whip of the House, Permanent Delegates, Zikumkani Nkosi zethu, molweni. Mandithi Chairperson ndiyekaqala indilungise into apha. Inkatha ke as much as isitsho uba yayizise le topic, kodwa inkatha mangazusixelela apho bafuneka silawule kanjani. Nge-7 kaMeyi wonke umuntu wayenestake uba athethe ngothina sino 62%. Athethe nge-administration apha. Inkosi Chairperson. Ndize nakule nto ye-DA, i-DA kaloku ayisenunitary state le Chairperson. Akho mntu one-constitution yakhe apha after so long i-struggles iwejiwe. Let me get to what I wanted to say. I humbly thank the African National Congress of giving me this opportunity of standing here and deliberate about the topic. Let me congratulate the People's Organization. Today it has 103 years and is growing from strength to strength. Let me salute the traditional leaders who handled the bull by its horns. Chairperson of this August House, let me brief the highlights of the wars that were waged by the traditional leaders. One day to prove maybe these opposition parties, Chairperson, they didn't consider the topic. The topic is saying, working together to ensure synergy and cooperative between the local traditional leaders, local government, and the people. So I wanted to say, Ngelinye ilanga abantu bakuthi baphuma umfazi eyiza athi zamka inkomo magwalandini. That was the way of Ngaichibi. It marks an important history of the turning point of African resistance. The traditional leaders suffered and sacrificed their lives in the war of dispossessions. While Honorable, my president, Honorable President of South Africa, Comrade Zuma, said on his speech on the 12th, since the arrival of the settlers in 1652 in South Africa, that was the end of the dignity of the black person in particular, because our land was taken by force by the settlers. Let me go to Chairperson. Between 1980 and 1981, in the Eastern Cape, in Kumbu, a king called Mhlotlo killed a magistrate called Hope. That was a conflict of a year, because Hope, that was the magistrate who was taking the land from our forefathers. I'm just highlighting a few. Comrade Chairperson, in Transkei, in Umtata in particular, there was a king called Dalingebo. He fought a successful fight because every now and then he was put in detention. And his son, called Sabata, died in Zambia because they were defending the land of our forefathers. Lastly, in 1960, Chairperson, keep quiet, DA, you've got nothing to offer.
Just address me, ma'am.
Lastly, Chairperson, in 1966 of June, there was a Pondo revolt. I mean, this topic is relevant because the traditional leaders are working with their masses. The Pondo revolt was a pain to everybody. In June 1960. Let me say, in 1961, December 10th, our chief, Albert Lutuli, where they say Mvumbi, he was honored with a Nobel Prize to prove that the leaders, traditional leaders, are leaders from their mother's womb. What happened? After all that, he left us, Albert Lutuli left us with a book, said, let my people go. I want to say today, Albert Lutuli, long live your spirit, because we are going forward, backward never. Lastly, in the transformation, after I voted in 1994, this ruling party managed to make a transformation. As a result of that transformation, 7 provinces have got a house of traditional leaders. They are independent of their, because we cannot mix these people because they're so special to us. Lastly, in this transformation of the African National Congress, we have managed to make a commission that everybody must be identified, even those traditional leaders, because at the look of things, Nkata is standing here for a bargaining chamber for the traditional leaders who are falling amongst their organization. We've got no problem with that. But what is taking place now? The African National Congress and its people is behind their traditional leaders. For that, I can say, Chairperson, we can't stand here and behave as if our leaders, they never fought the struggle. And secondly, I'm sure even those people were torturing and detaining in the apartheid system, they should be ashamed of themselves. Because even today, the traditional leaders, they knew that African National Congress is the only home that can take their struggle forward. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you. The Honorable Tuna.
Thank you so much, Madam Chairperson of NCOP, Deputy Minister Kokta, honorable members, distinguished guests. Madam Chairperson would like to, from the province of KwaZulu-Natal, to express our profound gratitude for the opportunity afforded to us to participate in this important debate in the year of Freedom Charter declared by African National Congress. Indeed, as you know, there is a correlation between land and Amakosi, so the citation of the land shall be shared amongst those who work on it is critical today. I think from the onset, Honorable Chairperson, we just have to mention that we must debunk, demystify the myth that ANC is very against Amakosi and traditional leadership. I think just to cite from the beginning, in 1912, in the formation of African National Congress, there were kings that were present in that Congress. You name King Letsiya, King Mshweshwe, even King Dinuzulu donated in that Congress, which means that even from the onset, there was a recognition of the traditional leadership. It is not something that has took place yesterday. As we know, some will claim, but they are just claiming from 1975, from 1990, from all those things. They are new beginners. So we've done this thing from a long time ago, Chair. So we must just clarify that process. In fact, we can just proceed by mentioning even in the Kabe Congress in 1985, there was a resolution called the Congress Resolution Movement, where we have to form all those Congress movement, your Contralesa, your COSATU, your SASCO, your COSAS, are all there as a result of this resolution, which means that as even from time to time when we evolve as the movement, we see the need that traditional leadership will always play the role as part and parcel. I think the issue of Nkosini Thuli will later embark on that issue. Madam Chairperson, we view this debate as an important station on our journey towards an institution of traditional leadership that is able to play its role in the reconstruction and development of our country and the people. Seasoned travelers will attest to the fact that two most difficult stages of any journey is setting off and marching on when the destination is just around the corner. Many a man has founded and collapsed just as the destination beckoned, while others are not even brave enough to set off on their journey in their first instance. The ANC will always proceed, irrespective of the condition. We are even going to be the pioneers of ensuring that the material conditions are set by the revolutionaries, the people in South Africa. Indeed, before we embark on this journey of the transformation of the institution of traditional leadership, we were visited by doubts, as men already have mentioned in terms of their skeptics, fearing failure and hazard that our journey could bring. However, because we understood that those who have changed the world are those who venture out in search of new ways of doing things, we decided that notwithstanding the incapable fears that visit such occasion, were the constitutional obligation to ensure that this institution is empowered, critically is aligned to our democratic dispensation. So it is not even correct to mention that we are dwelling on a process of giving them the salaries or all those resources. I think a lot has been done by this government to transform that institutional arrangement. And even some of our government in other provinces, like the province of KwaZulu-Natal, others were given a chance at that point in time. It will be myopic just to cite and give you the true reflection of what happened when they were in power, because nothing took place at that particular time. They were not even recognizing, so they're just blowing a hollow horn that is not even assisted. We also drew courage from the words of celebrated sociologist and philosopher Eric Fromm, who said, and I quote, "Let your mind start a journey through a strange new world. Leave all thoughts of the world you knew before. Let your soul take you where you long to be. Close your eyes, let your spirit start to soar, and you live as you've never lived before." That's a comprehension approach that the ANC and the stance that we want to take. Madam Chairperson, as from advice, we first imagine a world where the institution of traditional leadership was transformed, a world where there are synergistic partnership between the institution and other democratic set-up institutions working towards a common goal of building a South Africa fit for all her people. The vision that we saw put fire in the belly of even the most coward amongst us to overlook the perils and hazard of our journey, but concentrate on the ultimate prize.
Chairperson, we gather here today at an important time in the history of our country, where this year we'll be commemorating the 48th anniversary of the passing away of Inkosi Albert Luthuli, umvumbi waseGroundville, a Democrat, a traditional leader, a Christian, teacher, a farmer. An excerpt from this gallant fighter's biography reads as follows. In 1933, the tribal elders asked Luthuli to become chief of the tribe. For 2 years, he hesitated, for he was loath to give up his profession and the financial security it afforded at that particular time. He accepted the call in the early 1936 until removed from his office by the government in 1952, as we all understand that the government at that time, and some of those are still part and parcel of that remnant government. But today they've changed. They are singing another tune all completely together. Our people cannot be deceived in that way. We still know, we still are clear of what transpired in our history. Obviously, there is much more quoted facts about Inkosi Albert Luthuli's life, that he was the first African Nobel laureate. In a nutshell, even those early days, Inkosi Albert Luthuli understood that democratic practice was not an antithesis to traditional leadership, and that two were necessary parts of the growth trajectory of the African people. It is the theme of today's debate, working together to ensure synergy between local government and traditional leadership for the advancement of our people. That has prompted us to share this short history about Inkosi Albert Luthuli. We hope that from this excerpt of Inkosi's life, some of the issues and feared points of conflict between two systems are allayed. Chairperson, we have come a long way as a country. A lot has been said about our past and the era of subjugation of people in South Africa. A lot has been said about how we unshackled ourselves from the chains of oppression. The era I'm referring to was characterized by the use of legislation to deprive our people what was truly theirs, in particular the issue of land. A lot has been said as well. We still remember the era of Bantu authorities and Bantu administration and untold suffering and oppression with that system subjugated our people. We knew even that we shall overcome and that one day we will live in a truly democratic country, which was attained because of the struggles that has been achieved by African National Congress. All of us were always in agreement that that institution ought to be given a role. Even at that time, the key challenge facing us in the early 90s was to define that role. The task was left to the Constitutional Assembly, the board elected women and men who were given the onerous but fulfilling task of crafting the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa in 1996. Traditional leaders participate in government and development through a variety of structures, which Honorable Kaule has mentioned, Honorable Chairperson, but distort some of the facts. Because the reality is from time to time, the complementary duty of our government is to ensure that we create an enhancing environment for traditional leaders to participate in a so-called democracy. And they are currently participating. As I've said earlier, Chapter 12 of our Constitution identifies a role of traditional leadership as an institution at local government on matters affecting local communities. The Structures Act firmed up this role through the enactment of Section 81, subsection 3, 81.3, before a municipal council takes a decision on any matter directly affecting the area of a traditional authority, the council must give the lead of the authority the opportunity to express a view on the matter. So this is structural, this is constitutional. It is the reality that as African National Congress, we must also ensure that we protect all the inhabitants, the communities, because the issue of land is also critical. That irrespective of what is happening in the society, we must always take their interests at stake. So this is what we are doing. This is a very important provision. It was enacted with a view to preserving the integrity of the institution of traditional leadership. It is therefore clear, honorable members, that the participation of traditional leadership in government and development is now firmly entrenched in our law. When dealing with such participation, one must also remember that traditional leaders have now been recognized formally as public office bearers by Section 219 of the Constitution. Chairperson, the nature and form of cooperation between municipalities and traditional leaders is by and large dictated by us, by the law. In conclusion, Chair, we just want to clarify ukuthi South Africa izwe lethu lisifike esikhathini esifisa ukuthi amakhosi alazi iqhaza nalo ukuthi kufanele umhlaba wonke ubuyele ezandleni zabantu not ezandleni zama-individuals. Uma seyikhuluma le debate kufanele siqiniseke ukuthi ngaso sonke isikhathi
kuyofanele uhulumeni aqiniseke ukuthi abantu abayohlomula emhlabeni even ama-trust akhiwayo kuyofanele formulate-ke kubenefita wonke umphakathi not ama-individuals. Siyibonga balivala kanjalo Chairperson, siyabonga.
Thank you very much. The Honorable Mukwili.
Thank you, Chairperson. An analysis of evolution of the democratic order as a country would be incomplete if it does not comprehensively analyze the role and compatibility of institution of traditional leadership in a democratic society. In the pre-colonial era, the traditional leaders and traditional authorities were important institutions which give effect to traditional life and played an essential role in the day-to-day administration of their area and lives of traditional people. The institution operated and functioned according to applicable customs, tradition, and customary laws. Customary laws was regarded by the members of traditional community as binding on both a traditional leader and the people alike. The colonial and apartheid repression of black cultural expression completely restructured the central principle of traditional leadership, and times resulted in some traditional leaders acting as stooges of white minority regimes. But it was mainly traditional leaders who waged relentless wars in defense of their people's land and territories, and some paid the ultimate price for that. We honor King's Hintsa.
You have a point of order?
Thank you very much, Chair. I just want to check if it is parliamentary to call Amakos stooges.
Honorable Mukwili, did you call Amakosi?
I said they act as. I'm not saying they are. I'm saying they act as.
Amen. Please continue.
We honor King Hintsa, Sikukuni Mbambata, Makado, Muilwe, and many others whose shoulders were now stand. But we need to be honest in addressing whether this institution of traditional leaders have moved on with times. What role do leaders who are not elected meant to play in a society? And what accountability measures should be in place to facilitate this role? Our view as EFF is that ANC has stifled what is meant to be a continually evolving role of traditional leaders. By ignoring the development of rural areas resulting in massive urbanization, which lead to massive developmental pressure on urban areas, the ANC has effectively eroded the role of traditional leadership and is strategically delegitimizing traditional leadership in the eyes of the people. A 2013 report by the South African Institute of Race Relations revealed that a share of people living in rural areas dropped from 48% in 1990 to 38% by 2011. With the UN having estimated that by 2050, 80% of all South Africans will be living in urban areas. From current trend, one can deduce that the size of rural population and with it, the role of traditional leadership will be exacerbated. The traditional leaders cannot only be reduced to mere custodians of culture, important as that may be. The ANC strategy of maintaining the rurality of rural areas, a death knell to the institution of traditional leadership, it is also an abrogation of our democratic principle because it fails to transform traditional leadership and to ensure that it is in sync with the country's commitment to rid our land of regressive, anti-progressive notion of traditional leadership which have at the center of the maintenance of patriarchy as an order. This phenomenon promoted by the ANC is delegitimizing interested in the subjection of rural folk, women in particular. We advocate for an institution of traditional leadership that is actively involved in the planning and execution of local economic development programs. A leadership that is accountable, appreciates the role and worth of women. That can only be realized through proper development of rural areas with traditional leaders as a center agents. Go magosi a gaetsho ke rata go ba raya ke re nko ya kgomo mogala tshwara ka thata e se re go utlwa mo nkgo wa kgaoga ke a leboga modula stilo.
Ke a leboga mme. The Honorable Deter.
E re ko go leboge modulasetulo ke be ke iše mantšu a tlhompho go Deputy Minister wa rena Honorable Bapela ke re go maloko a ntlo a tlhomphegang le baeng ge ba rena le bona ka mola godimo. Go botlhoko kudu go bona bana ba bannyane ba ema mo ba taelela bogoši. E no ba go no re a gona ka mokgwa re ka ba tabogang modulasetulo ke be ke tlo ba ke re lebelele topic.
Honorable Deter. Honorable Mkwele.
Stilo. Ke ne ke botsa gore a go mo molaong gore mme dikgale a re bana ba bannyane ke nagana gore mo ntlung e ga gona ngwana ro rotlhe ba re leng mo ntlung mo re di honorable members.
Honorable Deter, the point is that ga gona bana ba bannyane, we have honorable members. Please proceed, ma'am.
Ke a leboga modulasetulo ke be ke ta tiša kgopolo ya gore re lebelele ge re dira lenaneo ba bangwe reno ba lebala re seke ra ba lokela mo mara a rena maatla ao. E reng ke tšwele pele ke re go na le batho bao ba makatšwago ke taba ya gore mmušo go etelela pele ke ANC o akaretša le go šomišana le magoši. E re ke le botseng le kgono maAfrika gore bogoši sa le bokgethwa ke morena modimo gomme le bjale o sa bo šireleditše. Ka gona ke rata go leboga di-province tše seswai tšeo di tlhomphago bogoši ebile di bo šireletše. Re bolela ka baetapele ba naga Honorable Mphambo Sebokwana a re bolele ka dinaga magae. Province ya Western Cape ke yona fela yeo e senago le didirišwa tša ntlo ya bogoši gomme mmušo wa gona ga o bona le o ikemišeditše go šuta mo tabeng ye. Le ge go na le botlhatsi bja gore makhoi le masen bao ba dulago mo ba na le baetapele ba setšo bjale boipiletšo go maAfrika borwa ke gore.
Labuskaghni on a point of order.
Voorzitter, ek wil net vra of die agbare Gali jou vraag sal antwoord.
Mme Dikgale a o tla tseya potso.
Ka tlhompho modulasetulong nka se kgone.
Se nie mevrou Labuskaghni die agbare.
Bjale boipiletšo go maAfrika borwa ke gore a re thekgeng magoši a Western Cape ka gore ke tshwanelo ya bona gore e be magoši ka sekgwa ke gore is their birthright. Ge re le dikopanong tša Contralesa sello sa bona se segolo ke gore Tonakgolo Helen Zille ga a thekge dinyako tša bona ka segagešo re re ga nnyake le go ba bona ka leitlho. Modulasetulo naga ya rena e bonwa ke batho ba bantši bjalo ka ketapele ya dinaga tša Afrika ge go etla tabeng ya tokologo. Ge re na le pelelo ka seo ke gore re tseba gore re etilwe pele ke mmušo wo wa ANC go lwela gore go be le diphetogo tšeo di tlo go tlhabolola badudi ba Afrika Borwa. Re betha diatla kudu-kudu go maAfrika Borwa bao ba lwetše go tokologo. Magareng a bona ke tsopola mme Madinoge ke ra yena Kgadi ya Mošate wa ga Mashabela yo a tšo go belega bana ba Mošate wa bau ba Diana Marena. Bona bokgoši kgoloko ba fentše kgopolo ya bo Jan van Riebeeck ya gore batho baso ba se be ba tšea karolo mo ditabeng tša dikgetho. Bjale e re ke tšwele pele ke gatelele kgopolo tše dingwe tše di be di thekgwa ke bana bešo mo bo Honorable Duma le bomme Makwana Matlala Bakone ba ile ba rwalelwa ba latlhwa Zwelitsha le bana ba bona e le ga ba be ba le kgatlhano le mmušo wola wa go ila diphetogo. Re leboga ge mmušo wa go eta pele ke ANC le bona batho ba ANC ka bo bona ba ile ba lemoga taba ye ba ya ba rwala setupu sa gage ba se bušetša gae ga Matlala ba yo mmoloka ba mo direla segopotšo. Re rata go leboga mmušo wa ANC ka gore go tlogeng ga ona ka 1912 ga se o ka wa tlogela bogoši ka ntle ke ka moo o rile go hlongwa ka 1912 wa tlhoma ntla ya godimo ya magoši yeo e bego e na le magoši a go hlomphega bjale ka bo Dalinyebo wa Thembu Montsi wa Barolong Lenoniko wa Borotseland yeo e bego e le karolo ya Zambia Letsie wa Lesotho Iron Kama wa Botswana Sekhukhune wa bobedi wa Bapedi mo ke tšong gona le Dinuzulu wa Mazulu. ANC e hlomphile bogoši le ga bjale e sa bo hlompha ke ka mo e rilego ga e tsena mmušong ya dira bonnete bja gore magoši a be karolo ya mmušo. Mmamotla re na le dintlo tša bogoši ya bosetšhaba yeo e hlokometšego dillo le dinyakwa tša bona bana ba Mabu. Province ye nngwe le yona e na le yona ntlo ye ya magoši ka ntle ga e tee fela ya bo Magana Diphetogo. Ge a be a tlhomamiša lekgotla la bogoši la bosetšhaba ka April 1997 gona mo palamente Seaparankota Nelson Mandela o rile o ikwa a kokobetše ka nnete go bula lekgotla leo semmušo go ema pele ga magoši e le go baetapele ba gagwe go tlhompha maemo a bona le go tšea karolo ga bona mo go tlhaboleng le go ageng naga ya Afrika Borwa. Re ipotšiša gore ge moetapele wa go swana le Tate Nelson Mandela yo ka sekgowa re rego ke world icon a kgona go bona bohlokwa bja magoši mo mmušong ke ka lebaka la eng ge ba bangwe ba sa bone taba ye a e ka ba ke difofu goba e no ba bongangele a re tsebe ga a tšwela pele nakong yeo ya go tlhomamiša lekgotla le bogoši le bosetšhaba Tate Mandela o rile boima ke go humana tsela ya gore mafapha ao a kgethilwego a ka šomišana bjang le magoši gore le bona ba kgone go šomela dinaga magae tša bona ntle le bothata. Se se bontšha gore Mandela o be a tseba gore mmušo le magoši ba swanetše go šomišana ka segagošo re re sedikwa ga se na lebelo ebile tau tša tlhoka seboka di šitwa ke nare e tlotše. Kgonthe ke gore taba ye ya go kwantšha makala ao a kgethilwego le magoši e tšwa gole mo mokgatlong wa ANC ga e thome gona bjale se se ra gore ANC le magoši ke didupana tšeo di ka se tsoge go di tšwana. Ka segagošo re na le morogo wa setlopia gomme ka gare ga ona re tšhela ditlou ra šila ra tšhela le matswai marotse gomme ge di botswitše ra ja ra ipshina ra ikhumana re bethile mpa ka lenono. Se ke ka moo re swanetše go re tšwelang pele ka segora sa rena le ANC ebile re swanetše go tšwela pele re se kgwatliše re le magoši re a khora ebile ra ikgantšha ka ANC. Kwa provinceng ya gešo ya Limpopo magoši a tšea karolo ka ga dikopano tša masepala gomme taba ye e tšwela mošate mogola. Taba ye e tliša diphetogo ka moo magoši a laolago ka gona se se tlišitše kgatelelo dinageng tšeo di bušago ke magoši gomme ditšhaba tša gona di phela di thabile. Ge ke bolela bjale ga gona kopano le e tee yeo tonakgolo ya rena Morena Stanley Mathabatha ka e bitšago le ba lekgotla khuduthamaga bo MEC ba rena ba tlogela magoši ka ntle ba tseba gore ge ba rara merero ya setšhaba magoši a swanetše go ba gona ka gare a tšee dikarolo le bona. Ge ba fitlha dinageng tša magoši pele ba ka bolela le ditšhaba tšeo ba kokota le go tamiša mošate ba tsebiša beng ba Mabu gore ba gona motseng ga ba swane le mekgatlhwana ye mengwe re dio kwa ba re ba kgobakane kae ebile ba na le batho ba bathano fela ba dira dikgoeletšo e fela se ga se re makatše ka gore baetapele ba gona ke bommakaepea bao ba sa hlomphego bogoši. A ke rume ka go tliša dikakanyo tšeo di ka tšweletšago tirišano ya mmogo ye ya bogoši le mmušo pele e ka ba taba e botse kudu gore magoši a tšee karolo ka gare ga dikomiti tša masepala tša mokgatlo tša makgotla a theramelao le komiti tša yona ntlo ye ya ncop re le ncop re kgonne go akaretša salga bjale ke nako ya gore le magoši a tšee karolo ka mo ntlong ye gape re swanetše go tliša taba ya gore makhanselara ba swanetše go hlompha maatla a bogoši mo tabeng ya go abanaga mo nageng tša bona makhanselara ga ba swanela go abanaga ya magoši a duletše thoko se ga se age kamano yo botse le maaparankwe se tliša tlhakatlhakano setšhabeng ba lebala gore šako la tlhoka thobela ke mojana gape e ka ba taba ye botse ge mmušo wa rena o ka tla le lenaneo la go akaretša magošikgolo re fela re kwa batho ba province ya KwaZulu-Natal ba bolela ka January 8 gore ba swantše ba ye gae bo keteka le kgošikgolo wa bona letšatši le la go keteka matlhakano ke ya baswa so re fela re kwa ba bolela taba e bele re re ge e ka tsena ya ba lenaneo la palamente e ka ba taba e botse matšatšia a be gona re a thompheng re na le bokgošikgolo sekhukhune go fa mohlala le bomphephura mapulana le bona e ka ba taba e botse gore ba thege ye nngwe gape ke gore bogoši bo šireletše magošigadi a basadi ba bangwe ka magaeng a bona a go be le thari ya masogana mafelelong bogoši bo feleletša bogaka ke sefero pele re be re kgopela gore mmušo wa rena o ka lebelela taba ye ebile re leboga gore ba kgonne gore thekgela ba bogoši ba ka baloi bogošigadi ngwametwa gane bjale ge re lebeletše ba ditšwe setulong ba hlomphile lapa la bogoši ba bo bona modula setulo e re ke re madišo ke re ke a leboga
Ra leboga mme. The Honorable Councillor Nkatlo.
Honorable Chairperson of the NCOP, Honorable Deputy Chair, Honorable Members and Special Delegates, Honorable Deputy Minister of COCTA, our most valued Amakosi, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Salga is indeed honored and privileged to participate in this debate to reflect on the journey we have come with the institution of traditional leadership as we celebrate 15 years of democratic local government this year, with an emphasis on how we can strengthen our cooperation with traditional leaders to deepen local democracy and expand development. We certainly welcome this opportunity, Honorable Chair, as we deem it crucial and timely to seriously consider issues relating to traditional leadership and democratic governance of the country. Developmental local government is defined as local government committed to working with citizens and groups within the community to find sustainable ways to meet their social, economic, and material needs and improve the quality of their lives. The proposal adopted in the white paper combines the strength of various approaches within a model which is consistent with the Constitution and recognizes the positive contribution that both elected structures and traditional authorities can make it in the overall development of traditional communities. Honorable Chairperson, emphasis that governance at local level is participatory and that leadership is about effective public participation presupposes the importance of the involvement of key stakeholders in municipal structures and processes, none more so than traditional leadership. In addition to the relevant legislation, Honorable Chair, Section 81 of the Structures Act, Section 4 of the Traditional Leadership and Governance Framework Act of 2003, outlines the functions of traditional councils, and these include supporting the municipality in needs identification of the community, facilitating the involvement of the traditional community in the development of the IDP of municipalities in which the community resides, and participate in development programs of the municipality. The clear aim of these provisions is to ensure that the institution of traditional leadership contributes to the developmental role within democratic institutions. However, Honorable Chair, after 21 years of democracy, the realities of constructing a new nation state have revealed themselves as entirely greater and more complex than anticipated. The country has not overcome its past and has not as yet fully constructed its future, with an inevitable tension between democratic and indigenous governance structures prevalent. The key issues appear to be the role of the traditional structures and leaders in the democratic dispensation, and how we can ensure a harmonious relationship with the new democratic structures, that is, elected municipal councillors and councils, of course. While democratic governance processes is inherently conflictual and traditional leaders must participate therein, we must protect the integrity of traditional leadership and carefully craft their role in the executive processes of local government. Collaboration must result in traditional leaders playing a meaningful role in municipal governance and building sustainable relationship with local government structures and functionaries. The gist of the matter is that cooperation of traditional leadership or monarchies with elected government structures works in many countries, so there should be no reason why it cannot succeed in South Africa, where there is a rich history of traditional governance. A distinction should be drawn between traditional leaders' intrinsic powers to lead their communities and local governments' democratic power to govern, both found in same constitution. For example, the British monarchy reigns over Britain but does not participate in affairs of government. In 6 countries, which is Lesotho, Botswana, Ghana, Malawi, Kenya, and Zimbabwe, the public believes that traditional leaders still dominate the resolution of local disputes. In Benin, Madagascar, South Africa, and Tanzania, the role of traditional leaders appears to be relatively marginal, and local government played the dominant role. Practically, while there's a legislative framework on the relationship between local government and traditional leadership, there's a serious lack of understanding and implementation at all levels. Disparate practices have emerged across the municipal spectrum. It should be noted here that Traditional Affairs Bill proposes a different and more practical approach towards the participation of traditional leaders in municipal councils, and entirely overhauls Section 81 of the Structures Act. While it is understood that certain challenges can be and can only be addressed by means of appropriate legislative amendments, there are challenges that can be dealt with despite the limitations of the existing legislation. To that end, the Department of Traditional Affairs, in cooperation with SALGA, developed a draft regulation and guidelines as interim measures to address some of the challenges and to bring about a measure of uniformity in the application of Section 81 in practice until the bill is promulgated. The regulations and guidelines will then be rescinded. These stopgap measures are necessary to provide short-term consistency of practice and respond to some ill-founded misconceptions among many traditional leaders and councillors, of course. The boundary challenges brought on by the municipal demarcation processes also require attention. Some traditional villages are divided between 2 local municipalities, or one traditional leader finds himself having to serve 2 or more local municipalities. Successes in delivering basic services at local level is not only dependent on the budget appropriated, but more so the effectiveness of coordination and participation of mayor role players. Modern society and systems of governance are constantly changing. It is evident that traditional institutions and governance have not kept pace with democratic, economic, and social transformation. And in conclusion, Chair, there's no doubt that our country needs vibrant, stable, and self-sufficient traditional communities and leadership. It is in this context that the critical role of traditional leaders in effective local governance is paramount, and its full potential must be unleashed. It is therefore important that the Kgosi tsa rona be involved in the decision-making processes concerning development in their areas. If correctly managed, traditional leaders can contribute to local governance through the use of their legitimate influence over people to promote development and responsible citizenship. Lastly, Chair, combined the power of government and the influence of traditional leaders on community issues can undoubtedly catalyze much desired development and delivery at local level. As SALGA, we remain committed to working with COCTA and our partners to find sustainable and long-term solutions to this fundamental challenge. And we believe by having this debate, we are well on our way to doing just that. Sidikwa King Chapedi Hasitat. I thank you.
The Honorable Chetty.
Greetings and salutations, Honorable Chairperson of the NCOP, Deputy Minister, fellow members, dear guests, and the security service members outside. As political parties, we must not fail to realize that we have a constitutional democracy to protect this democracy that we all enjoy today. A democracy that was fought on the backs, blood, sweat, and tears of men and women of true character and integrity. We speak about Tata Madiba, the assault that this country witnessed on our constitutional democracy most recently must not be treated lightheartedly. For us to do so is indeed to cast scorn upon the sacrifices made by those heroes and heroines that have come before us. The DA's vision of an open opportunity society is an inclusive vision, recognizing every individual, their culture, their tradition, and their human rights. Our traditional and rural communities are an integral part of South Africa. Our priority as a national government in waiting, and having achieved this in the Western Cape, is to open up the economy to all, create jobs so every person can live the life that they desire. Whilst the ANC keep traditional communities out of the economy, ignore their human rights, and denies their freedom, the DA has a plan to include all South Africans in the open opportunity society for all. Honorable Wana, we agree, traditional leaders were at the vanguard of our fight for democracy. And Nkosi Albert Luthuli, the then President General of the ANC, was a traditional leader elected by the Amakolwa clan. What the ANC has done is to segregate and isolate our traditional communities from participating in our governance system. How reminiscent of colonialism and apartheid, honorable members. Regularly ignored by the ANC, the Constitution of South Africa conceived a framework for a fair and just society. Let me remind this august House that the Constitution exists to protect the freedom of every individual and not just some. This mentality that we are all equal and some more equal than others must stop.
Chetty, I have a hand. Honorable Suka. Your mic is not on, Honorable Member.
Can you make it on? Thank you.
It's on.
Nkosi Mhlanga-Phambili. I just want to check from the honorable member whether is he aware that there are COIs and SEN in this Western Province as traditional leaders. Why is he not talking about them? Thank you.
There is a point of order that I'm listening to, Honorable Member. The Honorable Suka wants to put a question.
Yes.
You did not seek the permission of the member. Member Chetty, are you prepared to respond to this question posed to you?
When the president decides to pay back the money, Madam Chair, I'll then take the question.
Excuse me? He's not responding. Honorable Van Lingen, it is done. Please continue.
Let me be clear. No institution, tradition, or political party should stand in the way of free individual pursuing opportunities to achieve a better life for themselves and their families. We heard reference to apartheid. Not too long ago, the apartheid government, just like the ANC government today, used traditional leaders as agents of oppression and control of their constituents living in traditional and rural areas. It sent shivers down my spine that history is repeating itself as the ANC government uses our traditional leaders to maintain political control. Our president, number one, often retorts history. So let me tell you today that in the KZN, my province, the province of Nkandla, when it was under the rule of the Honorable Shenge and his party, the IFP, most traditional leaders were loyalists to the IFP. Now we have the ANC, who by virtue of manipulating the system have cleverly created a legitimate loophole to compensate traditional leaders for their support by remunerating them for attending council meetings. Allow me to quote Chief Mdantana of Kapoza regarding the legislative regulations of the development functions of traditional leaders in conflict or cohesion with municipal councils. Open quote. My role is to unite people and resolve disputes. People come to me when they have problems. I do not try to manage everything in my area. The problems with the introduction of the elected councillors is that they do not know what they are supposed to do. They do not have the necessary training to adequately undertake the duties. They are inexperienced and nobody informs them of what they are supposed to do. Everyone knows what the chief is expected to do. Chiefs are well established. There are no big problems between the tribal authority and the local councillor. It is higher up politicians who have caused this conflict by not clarifying our roles, and now the conflict between the two has been turned into a political matter. Let us look at land reform as an example. Land is the biggest national resource for our traditional communities. Vastly including rural communities, 21 million South Africans live on more than 17 million hectares of land. What has happened to owners receiving proper title deeds, capital investments, skill development, and the access to the market? Who is responsible for these areas where we have public representatives who are democratically elected as per our constitution and traditional leaders? Let us not forget, the public representatives are answerable and accountable to the elected and can be removed, where traditional leaders are not and cannot be removed. What has happened to owners? Sorry, I'll cover that, Madam Chair. What we should have seen from this ANC government is equitable distribution of land to benefit all, and not only traditional leaders who can use it to hold their communities at ransom with the promise of votes. The DA's respect for traditional leaders cannot be extended to support their sustained de facto control of land. Land should rightfully be given to those who were disenfranchised, including rural women, who through a patriarchal system are often excluded from this process and unable to obtain land. Councillors are still seen as in conflict with traditional areas and inferior to the traditional leader. The irony is that the councillor will have a vote in council, but the traditional leader has control over his people. In respecting culture, please, will the ANC enlighten me? Have we clearly defined these roles? Or is the ANC stating that public reps are superior to the traditional leader by virtue of having the vote? We believe that this inclusion of traditional leaders in municipal councils without a vote is merely paying lip service and is yet another scheme concocted by the ANC to gerrymander the electorate in ensuring that they hang on to power. The DA in government wants to create a new symbol of activist caring and see traditional leaders as part of our diverse story. Traditional leaders, if they are truly leaders, will not only support such an approach, being best practice to unlock rural development and participation, but will actively campaign for it. The ANC, in its haste to enhance its support amongst traditional leaders, by placing this debate before this House, should have firstly ensured that there were legislation in place to either hold leaders, traditional leaders accountable, or clearly define the roles and responsibilities pertaining to traditional leaders exercising their council responsibilities. In concluding, the speakers before me, by presentation and expression, concur. For how can one clearly debate that working together to ensure synergy and cooperation between local government and traditional leadership for the advancement of our people, when there is no distinct boundaries and no definite roles and responsibilities? I thank you.
Thank you, sir. The Honorable Taylor. The Honorable Taylor.
Honorable Chairperson, Deputy Minister.
Order, members.
It is imperative that local government and traditional leaders relate and forge a meaningful partnership based on development, transparency, accountability, mutual acknowledgement, acceptance and respect, including appreciation of different interdependent roles in communities we live and requirements. What seems to be missing in the link is the realization on the objects of traditional leaders governance framework, Act 41 of 2003. The Act is as follows. It does not appear that those who are in charge with the responsibility to lead implementation of this legal framework, councillors in bracket, does know its object, and if they do, they are not interested. In many instances, lazy ward councils and peer councils are threatened by traditional leaders. Some of these councils do not stay with the communities they are supposed to serve. Traditional leaders are still not respected, protected, and promoted in accordance with decades of democracy in South Africa. This is inconsistent with objects of Act 42 of 2003. Active participation in traditional leaders in matter of local government matters, in particular service delivery, are not dependent on willingness of councillors of that municipalities as it seems to be their practice today. The department must drive an aggressive program of capacitating traditional leaders, committees, local government practitioners on Act 41 of 2003, provide practical guidelines on implementation. It does not monitor compliance with the Act and remedial action to be taken against those who default. Traditional leaders cannot be spectators. Their voice must be heard on matters affecting their subject. Act 20 Section 1, sub A to N, specifically acknowledges that traditional leaders are roles are in safety, security, administration, justice, arts, culture, administration, land, culture, health, welfare, registration of birth, deaths, customary marriage, and so and so. Chairperson, in ensuring synergy and cooperation between local government and traditional leaders should not be made political issues, but development imperative. Because indawo yokuqala mama uchairperson masimbulele umntaka Khawula, honorable Khawula ubana ifakele nansi ngokwenyani it's a pity ubana siyipoliticize le nto. This is not an issue to be politicized. Koomasipala abaninji these traditional leaders zihlala phayana zingathethi, ezinye zifumana kweso stipend ezinye zazo, but nakugula umuntu ezilalini apho sihlala khona bancedwa zii-traditionals, not ii-ward councillors. Ii-councillors zithi zongena zohlala edorophini. Ngokwenyani ufuna ujongwa lo mthetho lo, because abantwana begazi nabo mababhatale. Ithi UDM abantwana begazi mababhatalwe, inkosi nenkosana nezibonda. ubana ngaba benza lo msebenzi lona maseke uzipoliticize zonke. This is not ayifuni politics le nto. We need to Deputy Minister, we need to address this in an act. Umntu akakhala unyanisile. We don't need to politicize this here. Abantwana begazi mababhatale ngomsebenzi abawufuna, not i-stipend, because other stipends zidecidwa ngumasipala. Ubana ayithandwa lo nkosi ayisifumane eso stipend inkosi.
Thank you, Honorable Member. The Honorable Nzemande. It's fine even if you speak from there, sir, unless you prefer to go to the podium. Okay.
I thank you, Honorable Chairperson. Honorable Chairperson, I move on the premise that, in particular, members from the beloved movement of the people have articulated our positions and policies. They've given us the analysis of the state of affairs in relation to the role and functions of traditional leaders in our system of governance. I move also in the premise that we all remember that our state is a republic, and a republic with a constitution that accords everyone equality, human rights, and general rights of participation in politics. Honorable Kaula, traditional leaders who, and many of them come from your party and our party, have been participating as politicians in the system of governance and thus representing the interest of traditional leaders in the system, in our democracy. And that the role of traditional leaders, sometimes confined into customary responsibilities, is indeed relevant to them and is appropriate to them for that purpose. And there's no contestation in as far as that is concerned. I further move on the premise, Honorable Chairperson, that when we talk the participation of traditional leaders, we talk about their ability to influence people to understand democracy, their ability to participate in fighting crime, in promoting health, in promoting development within their rural sphere of the traditional communities, and even to help in job development for the people, to fight the scourge of people migrating into urban areas and thus becoming outcasts in informal settlement that are not serviced. Now, Honorable Chairperson, this role we play together with traditional leaders to ensure that the rights accrued in the Constitution are indeed beneficial to the people we all serve, politicians and traditional leaders. We also move with an assertion that traditional leaders hold whatever and play whatever responsibility in trust on behalf of the communities who have a right to choice, to association, to participate in any activities of the country. I think there's no contestation there, Chair, unless you are confused like the EFF speakers and the DA speakers here today who are totally misled. But I'm coming just now to them. Honorable Chairperson, Honorable Chetty keeps misleading this, and I want to put for a record that the Constitution of this country is not under any threat. It is a Constitution that is nurtured by the blood and the spirit of the heroes, some of them you quoted here, and by all of us committed under it here today. that constitution we will all defend with all what it takes, as we did in the past, and we will do today, and we will do in the future to come. This constitution is under no threat. Now, Honorable Chairperson, the Honorable Chetty, now that he played a game, let me play a political game with him. He was a councillor in Msunduzi municipality, where I come from. He is part of those people who collapsed the municipality. And Section 139(1)B was put in place. He was a councillor then. He ran away to here to play clean, to play perfect. This is a kind of an honorable member. He must also pay whatever he benefited when that municipality collapsed. Right.
Honorable Nzimande, sorry, Honorable Nzimande.
On a point of
Honorable
order, Chair.
Chetty.
Chair, I'm saying on a point of order. The Honorable Nzimande is Muslim in the House, in the sense that I was a former. No, I'm speaking to the chairperson. I'm just the chairperson. Give me some protection.
Honorable members, allow him to make the point of order. What's the point of order?
As the chair, I was a member of the ANC. I resigned. I was a member of the DA in the council, and then I came across here. I did not come across here. He's misled in the House chair. I did not come across here and run away from the council when it was defunct.
It's not
a point of order.
Honorable Chetty, that is not a point of order. Honorable Nzimande, continue.
I thank you, Chairperson. Now, I find it a bit difficult, Honorable Chairperson, to respond to Honorable Mukweli. It was a mismatch of speaking. I couldn't understand. She was talking about evolution of rural areas, and I don't know whether when there's how does a rural area evolves to what, and from there she speaks of us delegitimizing the chief. So it was such a mismatch. A speech wrote by somebody who was sleeping and must have had something last night, and I just handed to the House before coming into the House. Yes, Chair.
Honorable, sorry. Honorable Mokwele.
On a point of order, Chair.
Yes.
Honorable Nzimande was not with me when I write my speech. So he mustn't refer to me as if somebody wrote a speech for me. I wrote what I wrote, and I explained what I explained. So he must just continue with ANC tendencies.
No, honorable members, you must allow her to make her point. That is not a point of order. It's a discussion. Honorable Labuska Khan.
Honorable Chair, I want to refer you to the previous term. There was a ruling made by the chairperson of the NCOP that we in future never will refer back to anybody writing speeches for anybody. That was a ruling in this House. I refer you to the Hansard, and I would call on you to rule on that rule. Thank you.
Unfortunately, we are not referring me to a rule. We are referring me to what happened in the past. So I can come back and confirm what you have dealt with, Honorable Labuska Khan. Thank you. Continue, Honorable Nzimande.
I thank you, Honorable House Chair. The speech remains a mismatch. Whoever wrote it still remains a mismatch that cannot be understood, that is senseless.
Honorable Nzimande, sorry. Honorable Mokwele.
I request that the honorable member, I'm afraid police will be called. So he mustn't go that route, Honorable Chair. I request that all the speeches were mismatched. If we had to debate about traditional leadership and signing, all of them, especially from the ANC, were mismatched. So he mustn't continuously refer to my speech as if.
Thank you. I've allowed you to make your point, but being seated here as a presiding officer, I'm not comfortable when you are making this statement that I'm going to call police. It's like you are in making a very serious statement, so refrain from doing that. If you want to make a point of order, you make a point of order, and we're going to allow you to do that. But what you are raising is a subject to a debate. It's a point for a debate. Continue, Honorable Nzimande.
I thank you, Honorable Chair, and again, as a matter of fact, I cannot be instructed by the EFF on whatever they think I must say or not say, Honorable Chair, as long as it's within the order and the rules of this House, which we highly honor. Honorable Chairperson, Honorable Kaula also raised a point that the ANC is focusing on remuneration and this. We are not ashamed of that. The traditional leaders have been, their dignity has been affected for a long time, not for votes. The traditional leaders, their numbers are very few in the country. Their votes might not even count 1%, Honorable House Chair. So their vote is not, we're not requesting their vote. We do go and campaign to them if we want their vote. And we are not ashamed of that as well. If they give us a vote because we're doing well as government, it's 100% well, Chair, with us, with the ANC. Yes, because if they vote for us, they vote for us because our policies do recognize their dignity. They recognize they recognize the performance of the ANC, and they accept the policies of the ANC. But it is, hear this one, Honorable House Chair, it is hypocritical for any DA member to howl here now, because they celebrated a short-lived acceptance of Inkosi Udalinjebo. They were over the moon with that. Now they are coming here, they are talking a different story. The traditional leaders might see them for what they are. They celebrated because they hoped that the Abatembu will vote for them in the Eastern Cape. A shame. This is hypocrisy. We've been seeing this hypocrisy ever since with the DA people, Honorable Chair. Now, in the Western Cape, the same thing, Chair. They are busy creating a place, theater place, because they think that culture just emanates, you just play it on stage, you dance on stage. They formed 16, 17, 20 cultural councils for what? For dancing. The cultural groups, cultural groupings come from traditional communities. There is no culture that is separated from tradition. Therefore, they must recognize the traditional leadership in the institution. They must allocate the budget for that. The Khoi and the San, they are living here. They are a traditional community. They are not a cultural group to dance for them. So they're not organizing a play and get cultural groups to dance for them and dance for them. And in therefore, Chair, we are saying that in the Western Cape, traditional community must be recognized as traditional communities with their own leaders, budget allocated, no cultural groups, and you come and celebrate cultural groups. Honorable Chairperson, therefore, in our view, Honorable Chairperson, as the African National Congress, the synergy exists. Our colleagues, my comrades, have quite categorically explained and clarified where this synergy exists, the acts, the legal frameworks, the constitution, which encapsulate all of these synergy, and they made commitments that the African National Congress will continue to make sure that the role of traditional leaders of cooperation, of participating in the development of their own traditional communities and themselves continues. As I said, Chair, in that point of remuneration and salaries, we also continue to make sure that their traditional courts or the traditional seat areas of traditional leaders.
Honorable Lord.
I think we must just call on the officials to make sure that the timer that's on the system is in such a manner that everybody can follow what's going on. So you must please just ask the officials to make sure that with the timer we've got here, there's some kind of noise or signal given to all the members in the House so that they can see when the time have run out.
Honorable Lord, take your seat. Conclude, Honorable Nzimande.
I thank Honorable Chair, and as such, we will honor and we make a plea to a plea to all our traditional leadership and the people in the traditional communities to work with the African National Congress unashamedly, because we are here to improve their life and conditions, because they are part of the democracy and the republic that they fought for. I thank you, Honorable Chairperson.
Thank you. The Honorable Deputy Minister of Kyoto, Honorable Bape.
Thank you, House Chairperson, and my apology on the walking movement. And let me, from the onset, thank Honorable Kaula for the debate that you have sponsored today to really come and discuss this very, very important, significant topic. And indeed, as you said, that it was the first time that you got 10 minutes, and I thought you would utilize all your 10 minutes, but you did not. I think you felt intimidated with just 10 minutes. You know? So you should have really went in and then really go into that. Honorable House Chair, I think all speakers and participants and all the parties do agree that there is a role for traditional leadership in democracy, and indeed they support. And obviously, unfortunately, some played into the politics, such as the DA and the EFF, but it's just an unfortunate element. We hope, therefore, that this matter will then be treated as traditional leaders. Some are watching us wherever they are as we debate and tackle this very important topic. Today's debates, therefore, offers us an opportunity to reflect on traditional leadership in a democratic dispensation, particularly on the relationships between local government and traditional leadership in the advancements of democracy. In South Africa, the relevance and location of traditional leadership continues to be debated quite extensively by various sectors of society. At the core of the debate is the compatibility of this institution with democracy and human rights. The institution of traditional leadership is perceived to be anachronistic by several proponents of democracy. There are, of course, those who believe that this institution will just die and be forgotten about, and they are unfortunately not going to see that. This is contrary to the recent general elections, where about 23 million voters in the country voted from the traditional communities themselves. In giving strength to the department and the alignment on the DP and DP goals, our strategic focus will be outlined in the following 5-point plan, which we refer to as simple as 5 pillars. Number one is the stabilization and strengthening of the traditional leadership institutions. The Constitution recognizes them, and it then left to us to enact legislation that can then begin to give meaning and effect. And as we do so, we will then have to stabilize and to strengthen them and ensure, therefore, that all traditional leadership institutions are supported and in the country. And when we say so, we look at all the indigenous groups. AmaZulu, Bapedi, Basotho, Bavenda, AmaSwati, Batswana, AmaXhosa, AmaNdebele, Batsonga, and the Kwendesan. And all of them deserve better stabilization and strengthening of this. The second objective or pillar is the promotion of cultural and customary way of life, which conforms to the Bill of Rights, the constitutional and democratic principles. We need to begin to look at those activities and ensure that they are promoted, because amongst those is language. Amongst those is our pride of the clothes that we wear. Among those is the food, that the way we prepare them in an African way. And let's then begin to see people going into the space to really, in the tourism market, have African restaurants that sells African cuisine. When you go to other countries, China and everywhere, they are proud about who they are. And in South Africa, we tend then to forget who we are. And therefore, we need really to assist and ensure that the traditional leadership plays a leading role in this with our own support. The third is the development of policies and legislation and regulations towards the transformation of the sector itself. Unfortunately, there are still such practices such as Ugutwala and the others that are discriminatory in nature, and we might then begin to look at a group of those and say, what is it that we're going to be doing really to reform and then transform them so that they can still be there as part of the display, however, without discrimination and of women or children in that particular context. The fourth is the revival and the activation of economic activities, working in collaboration with other sectors, government. Let our people balime. Let our people go back and buy the beats. Let our people go back buy the imshanyelo. So the land is plentiful. It gives them all the natural resources. Let them begin to be marshaled so that then they can be active in that economic activity, and then let them see them thriving as communities. And then the last, obviously, for the role of the leadership of the institutions is to be involved in social cohesion issues, nation building, and the moral regeneration of our society. If traditional leaders can really take these 5 points and move on and then be recognized, be the voice in society, society will then begin to acknowledge, respect, and give them the dignity that they need. Honorable members, we raised these particular issues, understandably so, and other speakers have raised it, that colonialism and apartheid had indeed, over a period of time, destroyed and distorted this institution of traditional leadership. Now the time is for us to restore it, give it that dignity, and give it that respect. But obviously the laws that are there, including the Constitution that recognizes Chapter 12, are the laws that then we need to begin to work on them constructively and ensure that they are indeed helping us to achieve on that goal. Our democracy is 20 years. The focus has been on national and provincial governments. Then for the past 14 years, it was local government, so 6 years short of our focus in terms of our national activities and priorities. And now it's the time in the 20 years of democracy that we ought to give more maximum attention to the traditional leaders. Hence, the ANC-led government has established a distinct department within the family of Kyoto that is going to be focusing in the championing and restoration, the stabilization and the strengthening of traditional leadership. And now, in the administration of our President Jacob Zuma, a deputy minister dedicated and focused on that as ANC to say, we love this institution, it is part of our heritage, and we'll really have to ensure that we're able to assist it to settle proper, strengthen it, and let it take and occupy its space in society. Traditional leaders are critically ensuring that communities are mobilized to make inputs in the IDP when we relate it to the traditional leaders and the IDP processes in the municipality level. Using the Traditional Leadership and Governance Framework of 2003, as well as the Municipal Structures Act 2005, which was quoted quite extensively, 2008, sorry, require that traditional leaders must be consulted on identified priorities before they are finalized in the IDPs. What is lacking is the how, and the relationship that exists between them and councillors, sometimes adversarial, sometimes very smooth. It depends on personalities. So the regulation, therefore, between SALGA and the Department of Traditional Affairs, as the SALGA speaker said, are there to fill in the gap that must be in the law that is coming before Parliament, the Traditional Affairs Amendment Bill, so that that law is going to be strengthened in that particular role, and the regulatory framework will then be accompanying it, so that it's not up to the choice of the individuals at a given time. It is the choice because that's the path we have all chosen ourselves for. Traditional leaders are therefore expected to provide advice on issues of culture, heritage, socio-economic development, and service delivery. Traditional leaders are requested and urged to continue to make valuable inputs into the processes of the IDPs participate in ward committees, and make information available to government for planning. When I say this matter is the how, a lot of them are complaining that when these IDPs are called, they are just called like every public person. You go into the hall, you're just like everybody, you are just general. There's no dedicated focus where there's proper consultation with them at respecting the institutions and sitting with them, whilst obviously you'll continue to engage the masses in those particular meetings. The role of the houses of traditional leadership in policy making. We have two levels of houses. The first house are those at the national level. It's a national house. It was established as the voice of traditional leaders and their communities to be heard on policy and legislation. Houses of traditional leaders are urged, therefore, to make inputs into policy and legislation impacting on traditional leadership. There's a proposal from the House here that probably we might then have to look at them being represented in the NCOP. There is that call by the traditional leadership. We are looking at it as part of the amendment of the Traditional Leadership Amendment Act. Let's begin to examine and look at the pros and the cons. But I must say, they are lobbying very strongly. You may shake your hands as you like, but they are just saying a representation here, like Salga does have a special representation. That special representation, I don't think the country will fall apart, because we are giving it to Salga. Why can't we give it to the other house? And I think it's in that context. I saw that an honorable member was just thinking that they are wanting a vote or so. The houses of traditional leaders must be able to give account on the number of the policies and the bills in which they make inputs in. This will ensure that our rural communities and their communities are well represented. The implementation of the policies also needs the houses to play a critical role in ensuring that all legislation assented to by the President of the Republic of South Africa are implemented. The House is advised to subscribe to the government printers so as to receive all bills and legislation published. This will enable the House to engage stakeholders from an informed position. That is the advice we give to the House of Traditional Leaders. On the 5th of March, they will be opening a house in the old assembly. I hope members of the NCOP will be fully represented in that sitting. And on the 10th of March, they will then be debating the presentation by the by the President of the Republic. I therefore want you to participate so that you could then understand their roles. On land issues, we are urging the traditional leaders to remain the custodians of the land which is held in trusts on behalf of their own communities. Government and the private sector require land for development. Traditional leaders are urged to release land for development purposes. Traditional leaders have to collaborate with municipalities on matters of land use and management, and indeed we really need to ensure that we perfect this function too, which is not 100% perfect, and we are engaging the Department of Rural Development and Land Reform, that is the custodian of the trustees of the traditional land in the hands of the traditional leaders, to develop regulatory framework so that we can then smooth relationships on the land use and land management on those particular issues. On the moral regeneration and the improvement of the moral fiber of society, traditional leaders are known to be custodians of good moral fiber. It is of utmost importance for traditional leaders to lead in the promotion of moral fiber and regeneration. The substance abused by the young people is a result of the generation of moral fiber. Traditional leaders have a major role to play in the promotion of family and community values. There are still, however, too many traditional leadership disputes in the country, and the stabilization of the traditional leadership institution is rocked by that. Family members are fighting among themselves. There are those that are coming from outside of the royal families who also are beginning to bring up other issues that we have to examine when they are brought forth, disputing the legality and the authenticity of some of the houses there. The National House of Traditional Leaders has to take a lead in this aspect so that we are able to have stable royal families, traditional leaderships, and communities. I know that in South Africa, can I just get water? In South Africa, we we call them traditional leadership, and elsewhere in the world they are called royalty. They are called royal leaders, because traditional leaders really belittle them to issues of traditions. And yet we are expecting them to play a role in moral regeneration, in social cohesion, and also in nation building. If that be the role, then I think we should then begin to examine that. The National House of Traditional Leaders, therefore, is there to, requires a law to promote unity and cohesion amongst the structure of traditional leadership. It is expected of the National House to ensure there is sound community cohesion and unity on the ground. The different structures of traditional leadership at the national, provincial, and local houses and the traditional council must work as a united force in order to address the issues affecting this institution. The urbanization of South Africa, I heard honorable members saying that the urbanization that is taking place in South Africa is as a result of the African National Congress. I do not understand, because urbanization happens as a natural phenomenon all over the world. People are moving from the rural areas into the centers of opportunities and activities, and they'll go to the big cities where opportunity is. It's not by any political party of any nature, no matter how powerful is that political party, that can really force people to leave rural areas to go to where development is taking place. It's a natural phenomenon. It just happens in the world, and South Africa is experiencing exactly that. There's a rapid urbanization. You go and study books, read books proper, look at the statistics. It will tell you that it's happening in the world all over. And South Africa is not exempted from that particular activity. However, the ANC has as one of its 5 priorities, rural development as one of the apex, as one of the key priorities, and a ministry dedicated for that, and a department dedicated to that, with a DG focusing on programs and activities and issues of rural development. Indeed, we are beginning to turn rural development into places of choice for our own people and for South Africa. Over the years, therefore, traditional institutions managed to survive despite the frequent efforts of colonialists to marginalize or even to eradicate them. Efforts that sometimes spanned centuries. This non-elected form of leadership not only survived, but also is quite evidently thrived. But however, its role and nature is then get determined by development itself, also by society and by the leadership in that society to look at its evolution across the world. And indeed, it does have to modernize, and it must modernize, and then also that we need then to recognize the role that they play, because I think we all had given a heroism towards it in terms of fighting colonialism, fighting apartheid, including up to 1906, from 1652 to 1906, with Bambata Rebellion, and then thereafter, obviously, they were part of the championing of a resolution towards a national movement called the African National Congress, and then indeed they continuously participate in trying to say we need to save this country. A study was conducted by Williams J. Michael in 2010, Chieftainship, the State and Democracy, Political Legitimacy in Post-Apartheid South Africa. And he arrived at the following conclusion, that South Africa wanted the chieftainships to continue, not only for what it did on a daily basis, but because of what it meant to the community in the broader sense. Close quote. In addition to resolving disputes or helping to provide development, he found frequent references to the role of chieftainships in securing discipline, dignity, and respect for the community and providing the foundations for communal harmony and unity. At the same time, Williams asserts that traditional leaders' role as a symbol of unity is neither contested nor sufficient to secure their position in society. He argues that the public assesses the claims of both the state and traditional leaders to moral legitimacy. Both the state and traditional leadership has a role, alongside of their claims to performance legitimacy, which in South Africa, and likely in most of Africa, is rooted in the diversity of development and social services. So that's how we also ought to begin to engage, debate, discuss, let's find a solution of a structure settling in a democratic dispensation, settling in a country, in a republic, settling in a constitutional dispensation, but also finding a space to then begin to exhibit and play a role in society. During consultation with traditional leaders and their communities, the local government and other stakeholders before the development of the white paper, a number of suggestions have been made regarding a suitable model for rural local governance in those areas falling under traditional leadership. Proposals range from traditional authorities becoming the primary local government in their areas to a clear and exclusive division of powers and functions between elected local government and traditional authorities. The adopted proposed combined the strengths of various approaches within a model, which is consistent with the Constitution and recognizes the positive contribution that both elected structures and traditional authorities can make in the overall development of traditional areas and communities. The adopted model ensures cooperation, communication, consultation between local government and traditional leaders and institutions. So that is the model that we need to perfect and ensure, therefore, that is able to take us forward in championing the existence of traditional leadership. As its reforms, it also begins to adapt and also modernizes itself in this complex world where obviously their role it will no longer be the same in a democratic dispensation. Honorable Chairperson, the traditional leaders have to work hard towards being self-reliant and self-sufficient to ensure their continuous survival and existence. Yes, the department is going to be there to help them, and we have a national task team that we have established together with the traditional leaders that is now beginning to look at all the issues in a basket, not just only remuneration, salaries, packages, and so forth. All the issues from whether they have to have a vote or not in the municipality level, to look at the representativity, whether it's adequate or not adequate, including the agreement in 2007, we call the Memorandum of Understanding, which was signed by a coalition of traditional leaders, as Honorable from the IFP, Honorable Kaula had indicated about. We're looking at that document. Some issues were indeed implemented. Some obviously were then assessing as to the inclusion of them in the programs of government to ensure that indeed we're able then to comply fully with the issues raised as matters that can really help in the settlement of this. Most ideal option, therefore, is to embrace the dual traditional and democratic government systems. We have no choice as South Africa. We have a traditional leadership, we have a democratic institutions. Both of them must exist and coexist, and therefore we need then to begin to ensure how these relationships are strengthened, particularly at the local level, where it seems to be having quite a number of challenges. Coming to the back to basics, as I'm going towards my conclusion, we are now beginning to identify the following 5 key themes for traditional leaders. Putting people and their concerns first. We are saying that the role of the traditional leaders, being the closest to the people and having to be the ones that listens and hear people more, must ensure therefore that they are continuously become the voice of the host communities in governance, in planning, and in the implementation. On the delivery of the basic services, we are saying that we need to harmonize and strengthen the relations between them and the government, the private sector, the civil society, to enhance service delivery through regulations. Furthermore, traditional councils need to take initiative to support and complement government service delivery. On good governance and sound administration, we say we have 829 traditional councils in South Africa and only 278 municipalities. So the 20% therefore was a rationality of a proper governance model that can exist. Because you'll find that in one council, there will be more than 10 traditional council or 20 in some areas. So you can't then say in a council of 10 and all the 20 traditional council then must go and participate, because the number of the traditional leaders and those that are elected will not balance. And the 20% rationality was in conformity, because traditional councils will remain the number. Municipalities are from 800 to 278. We are now further rationalizing municipalities to be even fewer. We do not know what is the number of the municipalities going to be. It is more how the two relates going forward. On financial management, we say traditional councils must then be trained and capacitated to ensure that the monies that they are going to be receiving, and some are receiving, they are able to account for, because we live in a world of accountability. We don't want to find traditional leaders not having to face courts, the auditor generals about mismanagement of monies and so forth. We need to protect their image and their dignity. Therefore, we are working as a department, COGTA, to ensure therefore that we are able to take these actions and create this ideal environment of community traditional leadership that is at peace with itself. I just want really to then say to the House here, we are alive to the challenges that are still faced by the traditional leaders, but the National Task Team is engaged on this issue. The deadline of concluding on the matters and proposals going forward is March 31st, so that then a program of agreements will have been reached with all traditional leaders across, and then we'll then be able to then engage on the implementation. However, in the processes of consultation, we have identified issues that are immediate and doable and now. We have a group of those that are medium, and then we're having those that are long-termish because of the resources that we still have to look around. However, this matter will definitely be realized. And therefore, let's then begin to give this dignity and ensure therefore that it settles. As to its future, as we discuss and as we debate, as we started today, I'm saying that they have a role to play in society. It's going to be a symbolic. It's going to be the protector of the cultural tradition and customary. It's going to be the protector of the African way of life. It's going to be the protector and of our heritage. Is going to be the wisdom of our national identity, because as Africans, particularly the indigenous groupings, we must never forget who we are and where we come from. They are also going to be the mobilizer of our people to celebrate their being and their existence, and celebrating colors and cultures. As we can see, other nations that have settled in South Africa, they'll have a Chinese day, they'll have a Portuguese day, and what have you. You need to be proud of who you are and celebrate yourselves, and then as South Africans of African origin, as indigenous people of this country, proudly. And as for the DA in the Western Cape, now that you have told us that we are really embrace culture so much, one of the chiefs who was arrested and banished and sent to Robben Island and banished to one of the areas here, a farm, later known as Langa, is Nkosi Langa of Amahlubi. Can you go back to that township, rename it Nkosi Langa, to demonstrate and show us that indeed you have embraced the new South Africa and you are part of that? To the traditional leaders, there's no other organization that loves you more than the African National Congress. We care for you, we love you, and we'll do everything to ensure that all the challenges that you are facing now, they are resolved over a period of time. As we can see that almost at the national level, the national government has settled, provincial governments are settled, local government is still struggling to settle. So your issues are also still struggling to settle. You are not alone in the journey of resolutions and seeking resolutions and resolution going forward. I therefore want to thank everybody for participating in this debate, and indeed will indeed take these matters forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Deputy Minister. Let me take this opportunity and thank SALGA, special delegates, and the sponsor of the very same important, relevant topic, Honorable Kaula. Indeed, it's going to be business unusual. That concludes the debate and the business of the day. Honorable members, you are requested to remain standing until the procession has left the house. The house is adjourned. Thank you.